All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the November meeting of the Tullahoma Planning Commission. I'm the chairman, Paul Schwer, and I'm here to call this meeting to order. Determination of a quorum. We do have a quorum with 6 present and 1 absent. Mr. Rice is absent. And at this time, I'd like us to rise and Mr. Bill Comer lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please face the flag and repeat along with me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have 7 present now, so my pen's broken. All right, so we got 7 present, and read and approve the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission held on October 16th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
All right, a motion from Mayor Noes and a second from Mr. Bill Comer. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right. Minutes passed at 7-0. At this time, I would like to put the Planning Commission meeting in recess and open up the Board of Zoning and Appeals meeting. And I will call that meeting to order now and read and approve the minutes of the November 16th meeting of the Planning Commission. I'm sorry, of the Board of Zoning and Appeals. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion to approve from Mr. Bill Comer, second from Mayor Noes. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right, minutes passed 7-0. New business, variance 236, to reduce the setback line from 25 to 15 feet on Thomas Street. The applicant is Antonio London. And I would like the applicant to come forward and speak on his behalf.
Good evening. How's everyone going?
Good.
Wonderful. Just wanted to see if we can get the setback moved in order to be able to put the structure on this particular property that we want to be able to put on there. I want to just put a multi-family dwelling there, so we want to be able to move the setback to the property just a little more.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? We'll ask. All right. This is a public hearing, so at this time I'll open that up to the public. Anyone that would like to come forward, please come forward now. And seeing none, I will close the public hearing and move to Mr. Rice for the staff comments. Sorry.
Thanks, sir. It's zoned R3. It's 0.19 acres. It's a corner lot located at West Wagoneer Street and Thomas Street. He's got 2 fronts, so it's an unusual shaped lot. It's just local roads, so he's just wanting to reduce that building setback on Thomas to 25 to 15. Staff recommends approval based on the findings.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rush. This time, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Comer, second from Mr. Hall. Any discussion on this matter? All right. Call the vote. All in favor of the variance approval? All in favor of recommending the variance, or no, I'm sorry, the approval of the variance. Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. The variance is approved. All right, and with no other business on the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Board of Zoning Appeals is adjourned, and I'm opening back up the regular meeting agenda for the Planning Commission. At this time, we're at number 5, general public comments for items not on the agenda. Anyone would like to come forward and speak on items for the Planning Commission that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I will close that. Reports from officers and staff. Mr. Rush.
Thank you. Since the last time we met, I've been named Director of Planning and Coach, so I'm extremely blessed for the opportunity. I look forward to continue to serve all of you. Our next meeting is December 18th. So just let me know if you'll be able to actually meet that date. Also, January 15th is MLK Day, so we will actually meet on that Tuesday. Again, just let me make sure that you're available for that. And of course, we'll have Jim Patterson actually step in for Scott St. John. We'll request Scott when we need him, but at least Jim will be able to be here the entire time for us, so we're blessed to have you. Jim, you want to give a little bit of your background?
I've been working with St. John Engineering for 22 years this month. I have been working with the city of Tullahoma for about 20 of those years in different capacities, but primarily with the Public Works Department, stormwater program, and many of you have seen me here before the boards, dealing with stormwater ordinances over the years. Been very involved in that. I've been working with other cities with planning commissions for probably the last 10 or so years anyway, and look forward to working with the city of Tullahoma in this capacity as well.
Thank you.
We also have, I'm sorry. We also have Sam Edwards now joining us. He's a land use lawyer. I think y'all know Sam, but Sam, just give the public a little bit of your background.
Thank you. Well, I've been a planner for the Tennessee Department of Transportation for 10 years. I was a planning director for Wilson County, Lebanon, Tennessee, right down the road from you. And for 30 years, I was in a variety of roles with the Greater National Regional Council, ending up being the executive director and chief legal counsel. I have a BS in planning from MTSU back when they used to do that, and a master's in public administration from UT, and a Juris Doctorate from the National School of Law. I've been practicing law for over 30 years. My areas that I generally deal with, don't ask me anything about criminal law. If you have a parking ticket, I could probably get you life in prison. My area generally is land use law, so that's what I've done for all of these years. So I have developed a little bit of knowledge about a few things that go on with planning commissions and boards of zoning appeals. And you can blame me for some of the statutes you're reading in Tennessee Code Annotated, because I wrote a few of them, because I worked around the General Assembly when I was with the Greater National Regional Council and represented the cities and counties before those two bodies. So I'm here, glad to answer questions, and I'll probably butt in a couple of times before it's over with. I'm kind of picky a little times about certain things, about motions and things like that. So forgive me if I break into your making of a motion to make a suggestion to you.
I appreciate this. I would appreciate the advice. Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Rush?
That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Rush, please.
Recognized.
This is the time of the year that we usually have our training. Is that training schedule been established?
Yeah, we just talked, myself, Sam, and we're thinking sometime in February, just because we know how busy it is with holidays and stuff. But you have a year to get that full training, so I know even Bobby, I think you were in August, but she's got a year to get that, so y'all are perfectly fine as it sits right now.
Okay. Mr. Edwards, this is going to be the last shot you get at me, because this is my last year.
Then I'll make it a good shot.
Good.
But normally I don't have to worry about you.
All right, then. All right, there is no old business. So moving into new business, the first item is the subdivision plats. Rutledge Crossing Major Subdivision Final Plat, a plat to create 9 lots, which are a minimum size of .080 acres or greater in the Coffee County UGB, zoned RS1. The applicant is Ms. Connell Roten? Mr. Roten. All right, this thing has been in my way. All right, Mr. Roten, you're recognized. Please come forward and tell us about your plans.
Good evening. Rutledge Crossing is a 9-lot subdivision, and it's was approved, I believe believe the end of the year 2020, and we've been working on it ever since. So it's completed. Ben Bartlett signed off on the road, and we've got the plumbing in as well as far as TUA is concerned. So it's about finished and ready to finalize.
All right, thank you. All right, this is a public hearing, so I invite anyone from the public to come forward and speak at this time. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and move to Mr. Rush for a staff report.
Thank you. We're creating 9 lots. The minimum size is .80 acres. It's zoned RS1 in the Coffee County. UGB, it's 100 road frontage. Duck River's doing electric. Waters from TUA. They will be on septic with TDAC approved 10/14/21. The bonds have been issued in 45K. Benton Barton has signed off on it, on requirements. Staff recommends to approve with DAC comments with the addition of a reflection of the detention area on the final plat.
All right, thank you. Entertain a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve with staff comments?
Second.
Marvin?
Yeah, with staff
With staff, okay. Second from Mr. Comer? Yes.
Here's where I have to start that again just a little bit. Your motion is, what you're doing is appropriate. Let's just put it that way. You're going to approve the subdivision plat. The staff has told you that, it meets the requirements. Anytime you make a motion, either for the Board of Zoning Appeals or the Planning Commission, I need to advise you that not only do you make a motion to approve, but you state a reason for it. The law is very particular in this area that you must have material evidence, which you have by the staff's recommendation telling you that it meets all the requirements, and a finding of fact. Basically, you just need to say, I move to approve based upon the fact that it meets all the requirements as submitted by the staff. And, it's a technicality, but if he has to go to court, then those are the type of things that will turn the case. That, it's evident that you recognized the correct reasons for approving the plat.
Okay.
And any Board of Zoning Appeals case is the same way, especially uses permitted on appeal or variances or decisions that you are making that someone is aggrieved by the decision of the building official. It's just always a good move to say, I move to approve based upon just whatever, the evidence is presented to you. My first night here, I might as well break in and let you know what my thoughts are on that.
So for clarification there, so the motion ought to be, is like, I move to approve based upon fact finding from staff or.
Right, and make his
Staff's fact findings.
staff findings part of your motion and therefore part of your minutes.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so we'll try again then.
I make a motion to approve based on the facts by staff that this meets the requirements of the city.
Finding of facts.
All right, second from.
Second.
All right, so a motion on the floor for Mr. Sellers, second for Mr. Comer. Any discussion on this final subdivision plat? All right, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of approval based on staff's findings of fact? Aye? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion passes 7-0. All right. Item B, zoning map amendment 279. This is a public hearing. A request to rezone the property located at 706, 708, and 712 Southwest Atlantic from C2, general commercial, to C3, neighborhood commercial. The applicant is Mr. Michael Winton. I'd invite the applicant to come forward at this time. Mr. Winton?
Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a simple request. I've had the property on 706 for several years and just acquired the other two, and feel like it's in the best interest of myself, the owner, and the city of Tullahoma, change it to C3. Request at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing. I invite anyone wanting to come forward and speak on this. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and move on to the staff report. Mr. Rush.
Thank you. We're going from C2 to C3. It's 706, 708, and 712 South Atlantic Street. All the lots are .69 acres combined. Each lot has 50 foot of road frontage on South Atlantic Street. Each lot is 10,000 plus square feet. Planning Commission has already approved C3 to a neighboring property. Current C2, future C2, we created C3 to be that in between. So staff recommends to send a favorable recommendation to BOMA to rezone it.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Ms. Wilson, you're recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Rush, so I was noticing that the property owner was under the understanding that it was residential property, according to the tax record and things of that nature, and then discovered that it was C2. I wonder, do we know when it was changed to C2?
I could research that for you. The last map that I had that I saw was 2008, and it was zoned C2, general commercial.
Gotcha, okay.
Can I readdress?
Yes.
Yes.
Madam, that is correct. I had based that assumption on a tax card that was visible to me, and that's how I assumed that without looking at the tax code. So,
Well, and I have, and I'm only asking as informational because I have run into that situation too.
Yeah.
And so I was just curious.
Yeah, the tax card is usually wrong, so it's best to
Yeah,
call
okay.
me
Yeah.
to find out. And of course, we are moving our zoning map online, so you can
Yes.
just search your address. That's just taking a little bit of time, but hopefully we'll get up in Q1, so any realtor or anybody can just type in their address and find what you're zoned. I think that's important.
yeah, thank you for
Thank
bringing
you.
it up.
Yeah. So yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm probably going to be talking too much to you. Well, under the law in Tennessee, the tax assessor can either tax by use or by zone. The vast majority of tax assessors in Tennessee go by use. So it's very possible for the use to be shown as residential, even though it's zoned commercial. So that's a common mistake. No, I won't say it's a mistake, but it's zoned properly, but the taxes are paid based upon a residential use.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time, I entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve based on the findings of fact, section 1006E of the city Tullahoma zoning ordinance.
A second.
All right, motion from Mayor Noah, second from Alderman Wilson. Any discussion? All right, call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And abstained. All right. Motion passes 7-0. All right. Section 3, subdivision text amendment. This is a public hearing. There is, and there's a lot to read here, but proposed text amendment to add the subdivision regulation section 732 for the lot dimensions, and where a proposed lot in a major subdivision within the city limits directly abuts an existing residential major subdivision lot, the minimum lot size of the proposed lot shall be increased to be approximately the same size as the abutting existing lot. A new proposed text amendment to add subdivision regulation section 4.4. New major subdivisions within the city limits cannot have direct vehicular access through an existing major subdivision, right-of-way and/or road stub for more than 30 proposed lots. This is a public hearing, but this is a staff thing, so I'll open up to Mr. Rush to speak on this.
Yes, as it was written, I don't recommend it, but I do recommend us actually maybe looking at transfer of development rights, density credits to separate parcels. So let's just take into consideration that we just had the Kennedy parcel. We had 99 lots, and we'd say that we would max that at 50. And so you pretty much had that 49 times 12,000 square foot, so you'd have 588 square foot that they can pretty much transfer and use in zone, what is it, R2 or R3. I think that's a good in-between, so that's what I was going to recommend here tonight. And Sam can talk about it a little bit more, since he's the one that actually wrote it for the state, allowing transfer of property rights. The other one is no new, subdivisions may actually connect that are 30 or more. IFC requires, of course, 2 fire lanes, we know this. We also have the connectivity index in the subdivision. So it's a little confusing on why we would adopt this, but I think something along the lines of where it's a mature subdivision, we have those criteria, and then we can say post, or pre-2010, we don't allow them to connect, and then, or post 2010, we do allow them to connect. I think that's a little bit more grounds to work with there. So that's what I would recommend us looking at.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything, Sam? Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you just look like you wanted to say something.
Well, I do think the transfer of development rights is a good option for y'all to take. It's common to do a transfer of development rights across the country. Tennessee, even though we've had the law on the books for a number of years, not very many people have tried that. It is a tool that is used to help you implement your plan, your subdivision regulations, your zoning ordinance, and I'd view it as a tool. It is always a willing buyer, willing seller situation. You're not forcing anybody to do anything on that. They have to come to an agreement to do it. Your job is to recognize areas in which we basically call sending areas and receiving areas, where you're sending the density and somebody's receiving it. That's your job as a planning commission to look at it, to say, here's the areas where we can support a little bit more density, a little bit more use of the property, and here's the areas that we should send it from because it doesn't support, or is because it may be an older neighborhood. You want the density to be a little bit lower. The property owner doesn't lose anything, basically because it's a purchase type situation, or they can trade off. Again, it's a willing buyer seller type market, so they cut the deal but you have to recognize the areas in which this happens. You also need to, when you recognize those areas, you need to amend your zoning map to reflect that. So that's a zoning ordinance type action also. I'll skip over to the access between subdivisions. It's my view it's a very important thing for a number of reasons. For safety, by allowing buses, mail routes, and people in general to be able to move between subdivisions. One of the things I used to hate to see was, you're in subdivision A, you have to go out of subdivision A to go on the main road to get over to subdivision B. And every time you make that, come out into the main road, it's a point of conflict where you might have traffic. Plus water, everybody likes good water. And if you have water that's not circulating, I'm not the engineer, but if you have water that's not circulating, it does become stale. That's why sometimes you'll see, these little puny fire hydrants. They're about that big at the end of the line, because they'll open them just to drain water out for a little bit to keep that water fresh. When you have that internal circulation from one subdivision to the other, you don't have that problem as much. So isolation of areas away from each other is not necessarily a good thing. It's a case-by-case basis, don't get me wrong, because there are some areas that you just don't want a stub road going into because it's not it's not going to be a developed piece of property. Just may not be suitable for it. But between subdivisions, I'd say it's something you definitely need to look at and require under certain conditions.
Thank you. All right, this is a public hearing, so go ahead and, I'm going to open up the public hearing for anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and move to a motion. Mr. Sellers.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we postpone this discussion to a work session so that we can address, when I came up with this, it was just one idea from me. I wanted all of us to come together and work on this as a team to try to come up with something that would allow us to change our regulations so that we don't run into the situation that we were in a few months ago with concerns of the neighbors around us, a piece of property, and we weren't able to address their issues because we were following the regulations as written. So I'd like for us to move this to a study session for other members to come up with ideas, to hear from Charles about a way that we can try to meet the intent is to be able to stand up and be able to meet the citizens' requests when they come forward to issue their concerns about new properties.
All right, we have a motion to postpone from Mr. Sellers, and in lieu of a study session to discuss that stuff.
I second it.
Second from Ms. Wilson.
Mr. Chairman.
Do we want a discussion on this, Mr. Comer?
I would like to offer an amendment to that motion.
Okay.
I agree with the motion, but I think that a different order of procession might help come up with a better product than the final. What I propose in this amendment is that the order be that we first have the training session that is coming up by Mr. Edwards. And what this is in view of the fact that 2 of our members have not had any training at all, to my knowledge, and the rest of us can always use an update. And the second is the study session, followed by a vote in a regular session. And that's the order that I propose.
So postpone it till next year.
Postpone it till, you want to postpone it until after we had the study session and training?
Right. The training first and then the study session.
Okay. Second on that?
Yeah, second that amendment.
Second from Mr. Noes. Discussion on that. All right.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, except if we have any other major subdivisions coming up between now and our training, then that puts us in the same boat we were in just a couple of months ago, which I don't like.
Yeah, we're looking at.
That's just something that it was brought up a couple of months ago. We were going to try to have.
That could always, I'm not really
session.
proposing to delay it that much. This training session could perhaps be scheduled earlier.
But I guess that's a question for Charles and Sam.
Well, that's going to be a question for Sam when he's free.
I'm never free. It's a joke. I could do it, well, if you've already got your sessions okay for this year, I could do it if you want to do it in the early part of January sometime. I don't mind coming up here. Now, always remember, or coming down here, remember, if it's snow and ice, you guys don't want to come and I don't want to come. But, we can schedule something in December, or in January, first part or middle part of January. I'm usually gone a lot in February and May, so, I'll be more than happy. We can get together, Charles, we can get together and decide on a date, and I'm more than happy to come down here to do, and if you want to, it's up to y'all whether you want a full 4 hours at one time or 2 and 2. We could do 2 in January and 2 another time. So that's up to y'all. You make your decision on how you want that training to take place, and I'm more than willing to accommodate you.
It just makes sense to me, if something as important as this is to the city, that we have everybody on the same sheet of paper as far as training is concerned before we have a study session to try to work out details.
Okay. Got another question for Charles. Do you know do we have any other major subdivisions coming online within the next 2 months that you've been
I'm
discussing?
unaware of any major subdivisions right now that we have. I've only got some minor ones, and that's just 2 lots, but I haven't seen any, nor have I heard of any.
Okay, I don't have a problem with postponing them.
All right, I'll call the vote on,
I guess I would like to ask, is it possible we could do 2 hours in December and 2 hours in January, rather than 4 hours? And then what we could do is after our second session, have a study session.
I mean, as far for your credits concerned, if you've already got your credit for 4 hours for 2023.
It's a calendar year?
It's a calendar
Okay.
year. So you would need to, you start January for your next 4 hours.
Okay.
I mean, if you want, I don't mind
Well,
coming
no,
and spending 2 hours with you,
That's all
don't get
right.
me wrong, but for the credit purposes of it, you need to wait till January.
Okay.
So do I need to get something before everybody else for the training that is upcoming? Do I need to do credits before that, or since I'm new?
You've got a year. If you're a newly appointed member,
And then also.
you have a year. I'm sorry.
Was it, since you have real estate background, some of yours can be approved by just this board right here, of some of your training and everything?
all right, call the vote on the amendment. The amendment is to postpone, or to basically add that we were going to wait until after our training and to have that study session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay. So the amendment passes 7-0. So back to the original motion of postponement to hold a study session from Mr. Sellers and Ms. Wilson. I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, so that motion also passes 7-0. So this will be, we will address the subdivision text amendment after we hold our annual training and have our study session on it. So we'll get that scheduled. And then training, yeah, I am 2 and 2 sounds better to me, but it's kind of, it's up to. I don't like sitting in anything for 4 hours. We did that in a meeting one night, and it was not fun.
I don't even like to hear myself talk for 4 hours.
All right, anyway, with that, that's the end of our agenda, so we are adjourned. Thank you. The next meeting is December 18th at 4:30 in this room. Thanks.
Good evening. It is 5:30, and we have a agenda tonight for a study session. We're going to be taking two topics. We're going to be starting with utility cut ordinance, and then we'll go into food trucks. So with that, with the issue being utility cuts, I'm going to address that. I'm going to recognize the city administrator.
Thank you, Mr.
Jason
Mayor.
Wick.
Thank you. We're going to be looking at ordinance number 1616 as it relates to utility cut permit ordinance. This comes from a request by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for us to go in and look at the ordinance we have for utility cuts. What we've done, Butch and I have worked on taking the template that was provided to us by Alderman Glick, and we then met with members from TUA, have also sought out information from other utility partners, which would be like an Elk River Public Utility. We've taken those comments, combined them into this document for you to review. One addition that I would like to make is, because this is still a draft and a breathing document that we're still trying to solidify, had a conversation with Brian Skelton, who is over the Tullahoma Utilities Authority. He has requested that the TUA not be required to put up a surety bond as is written in this ordinance. However, any subcontractors that may be doing work for him should be held to that same requirement. I think in speaking with him, he was looking at the relationship that we have with the city, or he has with the city of Tullahoma and vice versa, and making sure that we're not asking something that probably is above and beyond for a utility authority. So I do want that to be placed for your consideration as well.
Very good. Any comments from the board regarding street cuts? You have had this since, we've had this for a few days to review. So,
on the have you incorporated any of the changes in this document suggested by Mr. Skelton?
Yes, we looked at the list. You guys got a highlighted copy of the list of
From
comments from
Yes, I got
TUA, and probably also one from PERPA.
Okay.
We went through those comments, tried to find some common ground where we could. I think we did on some things, but most everything that's redlined in here is the same, other than the highlighted stuff you see. That's where I went and tried to accommodate and find some common ground on some items that they did have questions.
Can you tell me, I think it might be easier to go from Brian Skelton's document and tell me which ones of those that you used to incorporate into our document.
The first one, probably the third bullet down, fee schedule to be billed monthly to local utilities instead of required at permit application. We looked at that. It makes sense not to have somebody walk in with a credit card or a check.
I agree with that.
So that was real, to me, was simple to deal with. The no bond thing, I figured that's going to be a discussion as we have discussed here. My opinion, I'm kind of either way on that. For utilities, that didn't concern me as much about the bond on their end as subcontractors and other people coming in to do work here in the city, of having something to kind of bind them.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, is not required for TUA themselves, but if they use a contractor, required of the contractor. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly fine with that. That was one of the things they had in there.
Hold on a second.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Jenna had a question.
I don't think we should be giving deference to any entity over another based on, if we either require it for all or we don't for all. And I think that has to apply to TUA and AirPUD too. So if we're, or anybody that's doing these. I think we're going to get into a sticky situation when we are enforcing it here, what qualifies as a subcontractor, or I just would caution about delineating between the two.
I think we have a pretty good relationship with TUA, and we have a lot of accounts with them that I don't know if we have a bond or deposits on, so it's kind of a mutual beneficial arrangement.
I think that if they, I agree, but I think maybe, I'm not sure that we can treat them differently necessarily than we do other subcontractors, because they are not a city entity. And that is, I think we could get into some liability there.
Maybe Jason could look into that between now and...
Yeah.
And if it's legally allowable, then I'm good with it. If it's not, then...
I'd have the same question too. Like, if we say no, TUA doesn't have to, then do we nix off ERPA, any other private entity as well? I'm not comfortable just saying TUA. Right.
They are kind of they're not a city entity, but they are a public utility.
But so is ERPA,
So is
DRUG, so is any of these charter, Spectrum.
So one of the
The telephone companies actually qualify as public utility companies as well. So we'll get into kind of a sticky situation of saying, nope, TUA, you're exempt. I'd love to do that, y'all know, love Chick-fil-A, but here's the deal, our number one interest from a city perspective has to be about liability and making sure that we're not treating and giving more deference to one.
So in our last board meeting, I had mentioned to you that we were looking to bring Sam Edwards on to help us with some of these issues, especially when it comes to zoning and those related issues. Sam is here tonight. He was part of the Public Planning Commission meeting and was able to give advice. So Sam, I would like for you to come up for a second, introduce yourself. They've all been provided a bio, but then if you have any thoughts on public versus private exemption.
Right, Sam Edwards. Some of you have taken my training sessions before. I've been a land use planner since 1972. I graduated from college at 2 years old, so but I have been doing this a very long time. I was a transportation planner, a planner with Wilson County in Lebanon. I was the planning director there, and then spent over 30 years with the Greater National Regional Council, ending up being the executive director and chief legal counsel. I've been an attorney for over 30 years. So one thought I had just to throw out to you is, and again, I'm not as familiar with everything that's happening here as, of course, you all are, but there's something called a functional equivalent of government, and you may view the Tullahoma Utility Authority, that's the proper name, right? Mm-hmm. Which used to be part of the city. I think it was spun off and made. So the purpose of a functional equivalent is it's doing the same work that a city would do, but it's a private enterprise. So a lot of times you can treat a functional equivalent entity a little different than you can other private entities, because it's actually doing something that the city would have done if the city continued to do it. So, and they're standing in your stead. So that puts them in a little different framework. Now, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just telling you there's an option that you could look at on doing something like that. And it's used quite often. Functional equivalent under the law is something that's been around for a while.
Do you see an easy way to delineate them from AT&T Charter?
Because they're not, AT&T Charter are not doing things that you as a city normally would have done.
They're also competitors with TUA.
Yeah, they're competitors.
Right?
Because they have they have light tube and.
Yeah, but it may be, again, I don't know everything that they do, but I know that, if they're a utility authority and they're dealing with water, sewer, things like that, Charter doesn't deal with that. Now, you may look at them in a kind of a phase type thing. If they provide this function, then it may be they're a functional equivalent of government. If they provide cable TV, and I don't know that they do.
They do.
You know, then that may be viewed differently. Same thing with, you look at, are y'all with Middle Tennessee Electric?
No.
Okay, a lot of utilities, electric utilities are providing cable. So they're in competition to, you know, the charters and the people like that. So if they perform multiple functions, you may look at them differently, that if they're doing ABC, then we require this. If they're doing, you know, XYZ, then we require this.
Yeah.
But the difference is, are they doing something you would have been doing?
Okay, so the discretionary, okay, go to the 16205, everybody just look at that. I would like to start there. Mr. Edwards, thank you so much for your comments. We'll probably use you again. Okay, so the 16205, if you look at just the language of this paragraph and this entire document, the biggest issue that I have right now with passing this as is there is too much discretion. And you cannot look at this if you're TUA or if you're a subcontractor and know what you have to do versus what you don't have to do. There is way too much discretion. It is not spelled out. It's like, well, we might make you do this, or we might make you do this, or it might be this fee, or it might be that fee. The bond being estimated, for example, or we're trying to say now TUA, and again, they do have competitors, so I have a big problem. I mean, one of the things it says that this bond could be issued over a 12-month period, so maybe that's something that we do and we give an estimate. But if we're giving TUA a bond at $1,000 and then Charter comes in or AirPud comes in and we make their bond $3,000, we're a government entity. And that playing favoritism could cost us some liability. So I just think that to make it simple, you're going to need to try to figure out these utility cuts, how to make this. If you're going to do a 12-month bond, I'm fine with that, but it needs to be a bond that you can enforce, you know, towards every entity, whether they are functional equivalent or not. In this respect, the whole reason for this ordinance, tell me if I'm wrong, is that the utility cuts are the issue by the utility companies. So why would we not want a bond from those very companies for the sole reason of this, since the whole point of that bond is to cover any repairs that did not get made, in other words. So if we're not worried about that, then we don't need this street cut ordinance at all, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, the reason we're here is because of these cuts, right? And because of the damage. I mean, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars is the city going to have to invest to fix these of our money, of our taxpayers' money? And I know I sound angry, and I am. And I know that not everybody was involved in this, and it's been decades and decades worth of stuff, and boards prior to us should have handled this, but they didn't. And it's on ours. I don't know how. I think we either say, even if it's a subcontractor doing it, they're doing it for the entity. They're not doing it for us, right? They're doing it for the entity.
They're not doing the bid.
So if somebody wants a subcontractor to handle that, then they can handle that internally, right? We don't, that's additional work and stuff for us to figure out and handle that, and that's not the name of our game. It should be as simple for you as possible.
Notice how it says letter of credit or surety bond. So this isn't necessarily them turning over money. So why would we not want every utility corporation to have a letter of credit? I mean, that's going to be something fairly simple, but you make that the same across the board. You make the bond the same across the board. Let's see.
if our concern is if we do a surety bond, then we all of a sudden get requests for deposits on ours, then to me, that would, I don't think that that would be an action that they would take, but that would be pretty retaliatory in my opinion, right? And so I think that if we saw, I don't think that that's something that would happen.
But just.
But that would be a
Just
pea
for
shooting
clarification and
contest.
transparency, if we were to have deposits on file with TUA for all of our accounts, it'd roughly be about a $12,000 hit for us to place that money on those different accounts.
One time?
Add a zero to that.
Yeah, I'm 20,000.
Sorry?
20,000.
Oh,
I mean,
I didn't say that right.
Is it because the city has not paid bills prior in the past, we've let something lapse? Or would it be a, hey, because you guys are doing this, we're gonna start charging you deposits so we can get into a spitting contest? Is that what I'm hearing?
That sounds like what you're hearing.
My understanding of the communication is not to be taken that way. I think it was really more to understand the value that they have placed as far as the relationship they have with us and the trust. You know, one of the things that's very important to us as a city is for us to have great working relationships with our utility, and I know we've done a good job of that. And so again, we're here just to present the information as we have it.
Well, Sherman antitrust violations are my biggest concern. And we cannot, as a city entity, if we were a private entity, that would be different. We can contract and set it however we want to and give deference to whoever we want to. But as a city entity, we cannot promote one organization that provides services over another because they are not a part of the city. And so here's the deal. It does not have to be a bond. If you read that first sentence, it says, no such permit shall be issued unless and until the applicant therefore has deposited with the city a cash, certified check, letter of credit, or surety bond. Letter of credit. I'm pretty sure that because of our working relationship with TUA, a letter of credit would suffice. And I think that would be the appropriate way. But in this 16-205, the real issue that I have, go down to where it says where the amount of the deposit is clearly inadequate to cover the cost of restoration, the Public Works Director or designee may increase the amount of the deposit to an amount considered by him to be adequate to cover the cost. Absolutely no, not forever, no. Okay, we're giving, that's basically saying at any time, we can say, no, yes, maybe, we don't like you, I'm increasing it. Absolutely not. And I'm not saying that you would ever do that, but we have to think about what happens when you retire. What happens when the next entity comes along that maybe doesn't have a working relationship, and the Public Works Director or designee, I mean, it's just too much unknown that we're allowing to be done here. I think it needs to be a set amount, and if that is not adequate, then the only person that needs to be making decisions above that, honestly, should be our city administrator, and apprise the board.
I mean, first, Butch is not allowed to retire.
Yeah, Butch, you can't get on.
Butch has a 15-year contract renewal on his desk right now. I just haven't gotten the signature.
Maybe we could redo that wording in that somehow. It's to say with proper evidence of the cost to be approved by the city administrator up to his purchasing approval rate. Anything above that approved by the board.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that this would be a fairly easy fix, right?
Yeah.
If it was projected to cost $12,000 and it actually cost $25,000, then that difference is your overage.
Sure.
But
But again, it's subjective.
It shouldn't be.
And
It's X minus Y.
But I'm saying that the projections are subjective. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, you would have some evidence to back up that projection. You wouldn't just do a wild guess.
Sure.
And say that you would have some, it's going to take this many tons of fill and blah, blah, and I calculate it to be this. You would have some evidence. You wouldn't just come up with, oh, that looks like that's going to cost $10,000. I think, you would, and we could put that wording in there somewhat to capture, with
Or why, if we just did a blanket amount of a deposit or a letter of credit, if somebody has a letter of credit over a certain amount, you see what I'm saying? Then that should suffice. A lot of these entities that whether they be subcontractors or TUA or others, are going to be able to get letter of credit, but they're also going to have insurance policies that cover them up to a certain amount anyway. So I don't understand, that insurance policy, whatever that amount could be, could stand in for a letter of credit in lieu of a bond.
For me, thinking here, I'm thinking this more on linear projects or big projects that they do in great length. Say it's 3 city blocks. It's not as much to me on a small utility cut where they have a water break or something like that. Maybe we need to look at that, tweak that around for linear projects that are long. Could be, I think you guys got one lined up here on Ovoca. It's, I don't know, 1,000 feet. I don't know how much it is down through there.
Doesn't involve street cuts.
Right. I'm just saying for more of those type things that are linear projects, such as kind of what happened on West Lincoln. That was a rehab project and it was down through there. I'm not as much looking toward the small utility cuts for a bond on every, if they go out in the middle of the night, we got a busted water line. That's not what I'm looking at. I think this could probably be tweaked a little bit to address more of a linear type thing where it's long, big project that may be a grant project or something that is linear. That's just my opinion.
So there should be some language in there that would trigger that, maybe size of the project or total amount of the project or something like that. That would be appropriate. Otherwise, it needs to just be a blanket fee.
Yeah, why don't you, 16205, work on that wording a little bit there.
Make it a little less subjective and where people know what they're getting into.
Okay, let's continue to
I've
go.
got one back here, 16204, I just want to clarify, just to make sure. This last line, and it'll continue on the next page. This fee is to cover the cost of inspection of backfill of asphalt or concrete patch of up to 48 square feet. That's not saying we're putting in, that's just saying that's to inspect that, right? That's not, there's no materials on our end, right?
Right, that kind of gets into one of the questions that I think TUA and possibly ERPA may have had. For these projects that have multiple cuts, like a big project, it's not one, again, back to the point of not having just a single cut. On that 204, I think that's more in line for something that's long and linear.
Right.
Because,
I just wanted to make sure that that was talking about actual inspection. It wasn't saying we're going to cover 48 square feet of, okay, so that's just the inspection piece.
Okay, go back to 16-208, number 4. This is 16-208, number 4. This is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of contradictory to the point. Manner of excavating streets. So again, my daddy did utility cuts, as y'all know, for a living for many, many years. In fact, they're back in the business, apparently, thanks to my brother. 16-208, manner of excavating street. On main thoroughfares and congested districts, first of all, that needs to be determined what specifically that is. Sufficient traffic lanes shall be kept open at all times to permit substantially normal traffic flow. Unless this can be accomplished, work shall be done only during the period between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. or between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. Shouldn't that be kind of the opposite? Unless you can keep it open for substantially normal traffic flow, work should be done during overnight periods where there is no traffic flow. I mean, and also you've got to think, you're directing how people do their business now. And depending on weather and depending on labor, you don't need to be out there doing these things during those times of the day. And that is way over-regulatory. We do not need to be determined, and it's counterintuitive, I guess is the word I was trying to look for, because if you can keep them open during substantial traffic flow, those would be the times you do that. But if you couldn't, and you were going to have to close lanes down, why would you want that done in the middle of the day, 9 a.m.?
Is that supposed to be 9 p.m.?
Is that supposed to be 9 p.m. and 3 p.m. or what?
Is that supposed to be 9 p.m. tonight?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
I think it was just missing rush hour on the front end and the back end, it
Trying
sounds like to
to
me.
get around school traffic in the mornings.
Oh, yeah.
in the evenings.
I just think that's too over-regulatory. I don't like that. I would take it out in its entirety. I just think we're trying to dictate too much through that. I think that the expectation could be in here that, you have here that there should be a flagger, and that, we would need notice to be able to put out if there were going to be lane closures so many days ahead of time. I think that would be.
But you're still then you're dictating, they've got to have a flagger, they've got to do advertising.
They already have the flagger in number 3.
I disagree with it being regulatory. They're our roads, it's our traffic. Our primary goal is to keep traffic moving, to keep people safe, right? So I don't get how that's
And the more
over-regulatory.
traffic that you have during those times, the less safe people are. And you also have to think about the safety of the workers.
That's what he's saying. You need to do it
Yeah.
in times where that's why we're saying we need to do it in times of less traffic. And if you can't accomplish that, that's what this is saying. Do it in times of less traffic.
The 9 a.m. and
And
3
you need to
p.m.
use-
didn't make sense to me, though.
It does now that he explained.
Yeah,
It
that's
didn't me at first, but
before
now that
work
it
and school
explains.
traffic,
Yeah.
and then after
then-
work and school traffic and before work and school
Yeah.
traffic.
Now that makes sense.
Yeah.
I agree that you could put that in here, but I don't like the times, because it says unless this can be accomplished. Again, I think we need to focus these ordinance on only that which we can adequately and feasibly regulate, because how would you even regulate this?
You tell
Well-
them, don't do it. Don't-
Okay,
Well,
and then what's the consequence if they don't?
Would it suit you if we changed that wording to say, certain areas may require working out specific times the work could be done?
For getting the permit, possibly, but you can't give them the permit and then be
Without
like,
specifying those times ahead of time?
we think, 2 to 3 p.m., there's too much traffic, don't operate. Yeah, again, I got to think of this earlier. We need to be very careful, this is for both study sessions tonight, and making rules for games that we don't play. So if you've never played the game, you need to be very careful when you're trying to decide the rules for it.
But he plays the game.
Yeah.
And so
My
I
whole
trust-
family plays the game.
He plays the game, and I trust
Yeah.
what he
Right.
says, because here's the goal at the end of this, right?
Yeah.
When we approve this, here's my goal. Right now, when we sit up here, we say, I'm upset with the utility, I'm gonna say everybody who's done street cuts, right? And everybody who came before us, because nothing was enforced and nothing was done, right? So the end goal here is for us to have a final solve to this, that Butch can enforce, and his team can enforce, that they can do, and it should be to whatever he thinks that they can enforce without us injecting in and taking away his legs and having him do his job with an arm tied behind his back. Because when this is done, the next time a street cut happens and there's a dip in the road, we can't say it was anybody else's fault. It is the 7 people from here forward, once we do this throughout all time, it is the 7 of us sitting up here. If the street cut goes bad, it's our fault. So whatever we do here, I don't want that on my shoulders, right? I want this done.
How does number 4 get the street cut done adequately?
Because I also don't want my phone ringing saying, hey, somebody's running a line and it's shut down Jackson Street. Why in the world did you guys do that in the middle of school? My
Rush
kid's
hour.
now late for school because of this. Like, it's small things like that people may or may not call you about that, but I get phone calls about that. I'm sure we probably all have. It's also thinking about the citizens, right?
I'd say leave it in there.
I'm good with leaving it in.
Leave it in.
I think we're all good. Last one.
All right, shall we go back to Mr. Skelton's list? I think we only got to, I think we answered the questions in the,
Bullet 3, I think.
yeah, we answered those questions.
Okay. Bullet 4, spec requires inspection of trench repair pipe prior to any backfill. I think the question is why. It's one TUA ahead. For me, I would rather not us have to be out there looking at these things and inspecting these things. If we can get back to following some kind of procedures, maybe that can be minimized of what we see, what we don't see. But I did not address that one. I left it as we had it in here.
So do you think that that wouldn't be needed to inspect it before prior to the backfill?
That's going to be a difficult task, and they can't comment, but if they're out there in the middle of the night, they got a busted water line, how they're going to backfill, the saturation of the ground, depending on all those variables, they may have to come back. Now, they'll come back to that, then yes, we kind of want to look at it when it's put back, because for them, in fairness to them, utilities doing their work, for the busted water line, you got to fix it.
Yeah, I would have.
Get the road back open.
I would assume, and I may be wrong in assuming, but there would be like an emergency repair that you would do right then to get back online, but then you're going to have to come back to do the final repair.
Correct.
So the emergency repair and the final repair would be totally different. I think the final repair would be addressed in this document, and where an emergency repair would be, just get it done, get it open as well as possible to get water to everybody and get traffic flowing in the morning.
Yeah, that's my thought back behind that part of that is just.
Well, I don't think we need to take that out then, because this would be for the final repair. We're back to that same.
Is that in here at all?
Yes, it's in there somewhere. The spec requires an inspection of the trench repair before the backfill.
Oh. That's also why we have these surety bonds and deposits, right? So in case we don't do an inspection and somebody did it poorly.
Right, if you have to pay to fix it.
Oh, yeah, they should be calling for the inspection just as any builder would for respecting a footer or whatever.
I would if I had a bond on them.
Right, yeah. Okay, then.
I mean, if I'm on that, if I'm going to default to what you think for the most part. So on that, well, not for the most part, I am going to, because like she did point out, I have no idea, right? I just know what I want the outcome to be.
The final outcome's what we're looking at.
Right, yeah.
So I'm going to default to you on the majority of these.
Well, I think on the final work, you would inspect.
Right. If it's planned work that it's not an emergency cut or something they're doing, absolutely, they can call, hey, we already know about it, they've come by, they filled out the permit, so we know, and they can call and say, hey, we're fixing to backfill this hole, send somebody out, and there again, we're talking about small cuts that, they can be done fairly quick, for us to inspect that it's being put back permanently.
How did these
verbiage that needs to be
cuts
changed, or?
that are in the road now, how did they get the state they're in now? Were they never inspected? Were they never put into the attention of the Tullahoma utilities and said, you need to fix these?
We have not inspected them, and I don't know if you're referring more to kind of like West
I'm referring to
Lincoln.
most of them in the city.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, we haven't inspected any.
I think the main thing they need to do is, in this case, you have this happen, they go in there and they trench it, they repair it. Now, you repair that dip in the road up to our standards.
That's what this whole document is about.
Well, I know that's what it's about, but unless we do something about it, it's not going to help.
Yeah.
I'm hoping once we get through this, we can sit down with our utilities, have some discussion, go through this whole thing with whomever their field folks are, and with ERPUD, anybody that wants to be a part of it, and some of our local contractors that do utilities. I'm willing to sit down, and once we figure out what all we want here, and so everybody's on the same sheet of music, and we can follow these guidelines.
Go to the page 15, figure 10, on the question that ERPUD sent in. I tend to agree with them. If you look at it says page 15, figure 10, it seems unreasonable to require paving from the edge of the pavement to edge of pavement when the cut is on one side of the street and there is previous damage unrelated to the pavement cut on the other side of the street. I don't think we can force people to pave over things that they didn't cause.
I think it's the finished product is the.
I don't think we're asking them to trench it from one side to the other. I think what we're asking is, if you're gonna cut into that lane, whatever that width across there, instead of having a bump, just a bump here, you go across the whole lane. And I kinda addressed that a little bit, because there was some, one of TUA's comments of a Shelbyville spec on that. I kinda tweaked that a little bit. And I kind of accommodate that a little bit of what they asked for in that particular spec.
I mean, I understand that you don't want bumps in the road, and that's the whole point of this. But again, if it's not a cut that they're making, it's not their responsibility to fix that road.
It is if it affects the rest of the road.
I don't think we're asking.
No,
them
this
to
is
fix
showing, in the
another
figure,
default
it's
across
showing
the
something
road.
that was already there. They're only messing with this. So this is what they're doing. So this would have to come back and be smooth right here.
Well, just because that's already there doesn't mean that they get out of having to fix that area there.
But it's not on them to fix because they didn't cause that damage.
No, but what the people that wrote this spec was saying that the road wouldn't be fixed correctly unless you cut out the whole thing and went all the way across.
Yeah, but that's on us to fix the road.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Butch, can we listen to Butch?
What we're trying to do in this case is bridge that gap across there. Because whenever you do a patch, it's gonna be a patch. You're gonna have a cold joint. I don't care what you do, you're gonna have a cold joint. You're gonna have water intrusion into that trench. It is what it is. But we were looking is stopping this thing 2 foot into wheel traffic, taking that cut and the pavement from the cut, taking it all across the road, not the trench all the way across the road, just removing that section of pavement so you can put fabric, what we call stabilization fabric in, to carry that all the way across that whole thing to help bridge it. I think that's what we're trying to get at.
Yeah, I agree.
Edge to edge, period, regardless.
Yeah.
Edge to edge, if we're paying for it, then I guess we'll be
We're not paying
charged.
for it.
We're not paying for it.
Who's paying for it then?
The utility.
Utility company. But then we're gonna end up paying for it down the road right
That's-
now, when it's not fixed properly.
So.
Not us, our taxpayers are going to be paying for it when it's not fixed properly.
Okay, so even if you do 10 foot to 10 foot, my thing is, there's still probably going to be a bump. It'll just be a bigger, so, I mean, you're having them fix a damaged area that they didn't cause.
Well, it could be undamaged over there. I mean, it could be damaged or undamaged.
Yeah.
The thing is,
Look at it this way, look at these two pictures.
Yeah.
right? Just say, it doesn't matter whether that's damaged or not. You're paving edge to edge, is what that's saying.
right, yeah.
And
Period.
you're increasing the cost of doing business exponentially. And
But it
you
would
don't
decrease in the
understand.
cost of the city repairing the roads later.
You're maybe decreasing cost of the city, but you're going to increase cost still to the taxpayers because if we call them as, what did Mr., what's his name call him? Functional equivalents, they're going to pass that cost along somewhere.
Well, the cost is going to come, and it should come to the person that did the damage than to the citizens.
I agree with the damage that's been done. I do not agree for edge-to-edge paving. I just want y'all to understand that everything costs money, and for whatever this costs, it will be trickled down to some other entity and back to the taxpayer somehow, some way.
Yeah, as far as accounting for that cost, that would be accounting for the cost at the proper place.
Right, versus it being passed down to
Right.
us.
What is the standard in other localities for edge-to-edge paving? Because to me, that just increases the cost of the repair more. The cost of the repair then almost becomes more than what it's worth for any business that would be doing business, in other words. I have to look at TUA like a business.
I agree.
Yeah. You know, so if we're doing it, let's say, and we're going out and doing a repair, but you're telling me that we are going to take out that whole section of road and we're going to repave just like we're requiring them to do.
For us, yes. Typically, what we do, we have nowhere near what they have to deal with. From us, it's generally a culvert that we have to replace all the way across the road anyway. So we do that, we come back, we backfill it, compact it, bridge it, put the asphalt back in to the grade. That's what we do. Ours is totally different than what TUA has to do. They got a whole lot of other issues, water lines, sewers, depths that are way below us. Our typical cut for public works, probably 2.5 feet deep, whereas some of their utilities are, some places probably 8 or 10, some parts of town.
Are other localities requiring this? That was my first question. 1 second.
East Ridge is.
No, other localities requiring, not the whole thing, I'm talking about from end to end, all the way across.
I can't speak to the ones, I mean,
I'm not
I've got the
necessarily
5 different
saying
ones I
about
looked at, but I don't recall exactly what all those different ones had.
I will say this, one of the things that Butch and I, when we were putting all this together and doing the review, is whatever's in here, we have to abide by as well. And so we started looking at what our additional costs and those things would be. So it's not just what's the impact on others, but we did put that into consideration as we went through and reviewed this.
Okay, so every bump in the road that y'all are planning on patching, plan to patch across the whole street. And I don't think we're going to like the cost of that either.
We're already doing it.
There's a little difference between a utility cut and a pothole. People think potholes are utility cuts, potholes. A lot of times, a pothole is just the pavement surface. It's not always the base underneath it. It can be, well, everybody rides our streets, you can see, we got alligatoring, we got all kinds of laminating, deformations. A lot of times, it may not be the base for us patching a pothole. But most of the time, a lot of times, we mill across the road. We have a mill that chews up the asphalt. So we just mill a trench of asphalt all the way across the road in most cases. If it's a pothole, not so much.
That's
But
like
that's a
West
pothole.
Lincoln.
Sir?
True. That's like West Lincoln. They have potholes everywhere. Bad ones. And the only way to satisfy that is to repave that whole area.
More than just repave.
Those aren't potholes, those are cuts, utility cuts.
Well, then they need to be repaired. If they made the cut, fix
I
it.
agree with them.
Well,
They
right
were
now,
paid.
it's going to be on us
It's
because
on
we
us
didn't
to do
require them to do it at the time. That's what we're trying to do this to.
So if we go back and re-repair those utility cuts, that's how we're going to repair it.
Yeah, most of them, if we're talking specifics to West Lincoln, most of those are all the way across.
And I hope y'all get ready to shell out your checkbook, City of Tullahoma, because if we're going to be following this and all those that we have to repair that are on us, it's going to be quite costly.
It's the only way to fix it. Let's fix it right, do it right.
Yeah, I think so.
if that's-
I think there's
You're
a-
going
I
to pay
think-
me now or pay me later.
I think there's a way to fix it right without doing that, I think is my point. I think you can still fix it right and have a smooth accommodation in that lane all the way across.
Offer that, do the little engineering drawings and give us this an alternate, and I'm willing to look at it.
Okay, I think that that could be an option, and I would advise TUA to help me out with that, because I think, and Airput and everybody else, because I think there's a way to fix it properly without making them fix damage they didn't cause, in other words.
That's not what they're doing.
That's not.
You're hung up on this little thing right here, and that's
Yeah,
not what this is
Well,
about.
that's what the question was about.
But what the answer
And-
that you keep getting is that that's not what it's about, but you're not listening to that answer.
I don't understand what you mean. I'm listening.
Even if that little damage in the street wasn't there, they'd have to go all the way
I know,
across.
I know, either or, either damage they didn't cause, or why fix something when it ain't broke? To quote my fellow alderman, because if there's not damage in the other lane,
Yeah.
He just told you why, because when we have the seams, then we're gonna end up leaking underneath, it's gonna end up damaging
The more seams you have, the worse off
And
you
so you
are.
get rid of those seams, period.
but sometimes
Like
you have seams in the road whenever you pave the road, period, because there are two lanes.
That's what the edge to edge does.
But the edge
Jenna.
is not the edge to edge of the lane, the edge is from one side of the road to the complete other side of the road. You still are
Right,
gonna
which
have a
does what you
seam.
just said. No, but if it's dredged into the hole.
You don't understand what, a paver is not 20 foot wide, homie. A paver is 10 foot wide. You're going to have an edge in the middle of that road.
Well, there still would be, there still would be an edge of the new to the old, regardless of
Yeah.
what, I mean, you still are gonna have a seam. I do see what you're saying.
If you look at figure 5 on there that shows not all the way across, if there's multiple cuts in one short area there, you're not having to go completely across the street.
Okay, show me that again. Which figure are you looking at?
5 or 6.
Figure 5, I think it is. My arms aren't long enough.
Right there.
Yeah.
This is 6. That's 5.
I'm sorry, figure 6, I'm sorry,
Six.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Arms aren't long enough.
No, I think it's fine.
Okay, yeah, figure 6 is where you're only paving the one side of the road. So, okay, so here's my delineation. Look at figure 6, now compare that to figure 10. The only difference is there was damage they didn't cause in figure 10. In figure 6, there's no damage. So in figure 6, because there's no damage, they only have to do one side of the road. In figure 10, because there's damage that they didn't cause, we're saying, hey, fix our damage.
Well, no, I think it's because the damaged pavement within 10 feet of the patch is going to be weakened when they cut it and make it worse.
I don't think that that's correct. Again, we're
That is what it
playing, we're
says.
trying to make rules for games that we don't play, and that's, I mean, while it sounds good,
There's a
it's,
reason why they do that.
there's not, the whole point of this is why I say it's over-regulatory and we're requiring too much. I'm with y'all. I want it to be fixed correctly, but again, we need to listen to,
Our expert, who we've hired to be our expert.
can you fix it correctly without paving all the way across?
Potentially depends on circumstance, and there's a lot of things, variables that go into that. I mean, I know what you're trying to ask there. There's a lot of variables. Like I said, if you're down at a 2-foot depth like we do, we put culverts in, they take up most of the trench. Those are tamped and compacted, whereas, again, I'm going back to what they have to deal with depths and things of 12 feet, 10 feet, 8 feet, 6 feet. Those are hard to hold in one place, so you're trying to bridge the whole patch, if that makes sense.
At times, I can see where that would be necessary, but I think with that, we're trying to make blanket statements in this where damage or no damage, I mean, you're still, the expectation is you're really wanting them to pave all the way across. And I can see where that might be necessary, but again, I think it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. And so I wouldn't want a blanket statement of that is the requirement, in other words.
It's not a blanket because right here, it only says if the pavement is damaged, and then in figure 6, it shows if the pavement's not damaged, it's acceptable to just do half.
Well, if the pavement is damaged because there's a scrape in it, you know, I think it should be damaged to the extent of that it's only going to make it, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, I think we have to give some,
Well, exactly, but I think that if the damage is unrelated and will not affect the other side of the road or the utility cut, then you shouldn't require it to be fixed, is the point I'm making.
right, I think that's the point between figure 6 and 10.
Yeah, I think that we're circling around. We can't vote, but can we nod and say, hey, how do we feel about it?
I think leave it
That way
as
we
it
just
is.
don't keep, I'm leave it as it is.
Leave it as is.
I say no. I say you make them fix whatever is necessary to be fixed for the same result and the lowest cost, because we're going to have to do the same thing.
Bobby?
Well, when I'm looking at figure 6 and then comparing it to figure 10, I do see, the only difference that I see, I mean, that I do agree with is that, so that you can potentially, according to 6, fix just one side of the street. But I guess over on figure 10, what that's saying is that if there's damaged pavement within 10 feet of a patch, that it must also be. Because I don't agree that somebody needs to be fixing something that there is damage that was pre-existing damage unless, you know, that seems to be some sort of standard. I'm not.
I think the reason why they put that there is because if you're doing that work that close to a damaged section of pavement.
No, I agree, and that's what I'm saying. That must be, the damaged pavement within 10 feet of a patch must be some sort of industry standard.
An industry standard that would compromise the integrity of your utility cut, yes, I would agree with that. But if it does not compromise the integrity of the utility cut patch, you should not have to, we shouldn't also be paving over, again, limit your costs, whether it's us or somebody else.
The only thing I worry about is that if we then had to go back and, because they put, like on figure 10, if they were doing that patch, and then it weakened because it was close to the damaged area, and then we're gonna have to go back and repair that, and then we're gonna have two different things. at
I
that
agree.
point. And so I do see the benefit of having it, just go ahead and do all the way across, because it was, and the only way I think that that's acceptable in my brain is that it was within 10 feet. So if it's 11 feet,
There's room for us to
then
work.
we can just say that you only have to do that one half of the road.
Right.
But, if 10 feet is some sort of industry standard, then.
But 10 feet is the entire width of the other lane. So basically, if there's any damage in the other lane, that's what I'm trying to say. If there's any damage on the other side of that utility cut, whether or not it's going to compromise the integrity of that patch or not, we're telling people that they have to pave it. That is not okay with me. And honestly, I think we might get sued over it, so I'm just going to say that.
Okay, so.
I don't recognize Alderman Mann. He's been
Apparently
silent
we
for-
are.
For a
I don't know
long
who
time.
said
You
it.
recognized it.
But someone said we should listen to the experts, that we shouldn't be doing, I don't know exactly how it was put, we shouldn't be doing things we don't know anything about. So they've told us, and the folks in East Ridge who use this have told us, this is the way to do it. And yet we're still trying to go through and nitpick and gut it, which will make it less effective.
Are you saying everybody doesn't know how to do it?
I'm
Because it's their question.
Here's what I'm saying, is that Butch is our guy. He's who we go to. He's saying this is good. We're trying to go in and we're trying to move this around, and not this, but this. And, we're going to get a product that does nothing, doesn't accomplish the goal. That's what it's all about.
I agree with that.
So I'm going to go with the experts on this and say it's good as is.
We circle around on this one.
Besides for some of the things about the
Yeah, some of the
bonds,
other,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is totally understandable
Right, but
stuff.
all the structural
But the meat of it-
things and the meat of it, I think
Correct.
we leave as the document has it, and Butch has reviewed and he likes.
Correct.
And then the thing about the surety bond and stuff.
Yep.
And the monthly billing, I think the monthly
That's
billing is
reasonable.
fair.
Bullet 6 says existing pavement should be removed, a minimum of 1 foot on each side. I think we compromised a little bit on that Shelby spec. I think we originally had it 5 feet on either side of that trench. I cut that back to 2.5 feet from the leading edge of that trench on one side, the leading edge on that, so drop that back by approximately 5 feet. So that was something they asked, and I think I didn't meet their 1 foot, but
If you're comfortable with that, I am too.
I think so, we can bridge that. That's, again, when you're removing the other portion of the asphalt that's not over the trench area, you're doing that to try to bridge that gap with some kind of stabilization fabric or geogrids or something to stabilize that whole thing, to help bridge it.
Let me make one, I've been silent. Let me make one comment about this document. By adopting this document, one thing it will do is to encourage bores under the street instead of a street cut. I think that in itself is worthwhile
That's a win.
consideration.
For that, yeah.
So if there's no further, but you had something
I was
else?
going to say, you brought up boring. That's a little difficult too, because there's certain areas you can dig a bore pit to bore in the road. There's some places you can't. Right-of-ways, we have varying right-of-ways in the city, so I try to massage that a little bit in here. Also, I don't think it's on the question here, it might have been, I may have not highlighted it. I think TUA had, for permits of things that are not in the pavement, I think I put in there some discretionary, myself or designee. If it's 5 feet from the edge of pavement, they can come by and fill out a permit application so we know where it is. We'll go out, look at it. That may not be a cost to them, not a permit. My most concern is in the pavement of the street. If it's 1 foot off the shoulder of the road and they're digging 3 foot deep, that does concern me because that can settle and undermine the road edge. I've got some specific examples in that, but it's too much to go into.
Yeah,
So I think that gets into a little bit of discretion that we have. If they've got a project that's going to be 6 or 8 feet off edge of pavement, that I'm not concerned, or my staff's not concerned, that that road edge is going to fall off and slough off, then that would be just them coming in, fill out, say I'm doing X, Y, Z at this location, and it wouldn't be a charge for that. Again, I'm more concerned of what's in the road versus how far.
I will say that Butch and I worked on this for a long time together, and Butch had been working on this a long time before I ever started working with him, so he's put a lot of thought into it. He's been doing this for a lot of years. He knows what he's doing, so I trust his judgment, and I trust what he's put in this document.
Any further input on the street cuts? Now we'll close the study session on street cuts. Take a 5-minute recess till we move into street cuts.
They might have watched, they might watch on Facebook Live on last week. don't you?
Yes. Yes.
Our study session will be back in session, and we'll go into a discussion of the food truck ordinance review. And this has been put together, as I understand, by our city administrator and planning director, Mr. Rush. City administrator, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had been requested by one of the aldermen to go back and revise and make sure that our food truck ordinances were up to date. We were asked to especially consider what surrounding counties may be doing as to try to alleviate as much differentiation as we could. So what I, along with Lori Ashley, our city recorder, and Charles Rush, spent time looking at those different ordinances and what we felt was the best for the city of Tullahoma. Kudos to Lori and to Charles. They really ran with this. I was more coming in on the back end to help just throw ideas out there and get some clarification. So what you have in front of you is the ordinance that we feel is what I think my charge is, which is to do what's in the best interest of the city of Tullahoma. And what that means from my perspective is what's best for the citizenry, what's best for the businesses, what's best for food truck vendors that are looking to come in. And to be quite honest with you, that's kind of a difficult task, but we've done what we think is the best job of putting something together that we feel will start us off on a great food truck vendor program. We also had two different meetings, one during the daytime, one in the evening. We called in food truck vendors for them to go over this with them, get some information and clarification back and forth. And what you have before you is the draft ordinance that we put together that we think is what's going to help set this program up for decades to come.
Maybe if I can add a little background to that as well. I had brought this initially and had it put on an agenda after having conversations with several food truck vendors. And some of their concerns were, we don't have anything really, right? And so they had felt that, one, there's no real clear guidelines for somebody that wants to come into Tullahoma and do this. And two, that if we, without having any clear guidelines, that they, and I'm not saying that it was, right, that they had felt that some rules had kind of been arbitrarily done in the moment. And without having something, here are our rules, it's easy to interpret things that way. And so the intent of this was to, one, have clear established guidelines that are in line with everyone around us, as he said. At the end up with a nice little media kit that we can point on the website or brochures or whatever to encourage food truck vendors to come into town. I eat at food trucks 3 to 4 times a week. I love it.
Say a day.
A day. If I could, there have been times where I've done it 2-3 times a day. And so I think that this is, I've got questions and we'll go through them, but that's kind of the background on this, is that there was questions just about, hey, this is becoming a thing. You guys have nothing for us to go off of.
Real quick, I would like for Lori to be able to comment during our conversation. Is that okay from her position where she's sitting now, or would you prefer her to be down at the table?
She's fine where she is.
Good.
As far as this document goes, what are the yellow highlighted areas delineate for us?
Just recently added. Those are actually per our last get-together with the public and some of the things that they wanted to see. And then myself and Lori, we got together and we added those.
I think we all had a question from the public about the background check. Is that required of any business in Tullahoma?
Not to my knowledge. And just to give you a little bit on the background check, one of the things we're looking for is best practice. We noticed that Deckard, Winchester require those background checks as well. I think there was a misunderstanding. Those background checks are not for every single employee of a food truck vendor. It's for a person who will be overseeing that food truck. So, for example, many of them are going to be the owner themselves because they're going to only operate one truck and they're going to be there most of the time. So we have that in there for that reason. There was question about why food trucks and not other restaurants, and our thought process is severalfold. One is food trucks are not stationary; they're mobile, obviously. Where brick and mortar, they're not moving anywhere. So we should be able to, if there was an issue at a restaurant, we should be able to notify and locate them. A truck might be a little bit more difficult. The other, quite honestly, has to do with concerns and making sure that we're keeping our public safe, and making sure that we have people that maybe are on the sex offender registry that really should not be operating a food truck. Another perhaps miscommunication.
Couldn't it occur at a regular brick and mortar business as well?
But you can make the decision to not go to that versus a food truck setting up in your neighborhood.
You don't know who has what charges at any brick and mortar restaurants that you frequent. There are not.
It's also not in your neighborhood. I mean, or your school.
The school, they can't do that anyways. The schools have to invite them.
Yeah.
And that would be on the school.
They should still know.
They should still know that they've passed a background check.
But that's on the school, that's not on us. It's a separate.
I don't have a big problem with it. I just had a question of why.
I think one of the other.
That explains it.
Yeah, the sex offender registry is the biggest thing. We're not looking for.
Not looking for felons. And that's what I want to make sure is, again, this is a draft document, very fluid, is we would go back in and more greatly define what could constitute an issue with the background check, sex offender registry being the most that we would look for, but also if there's a long pattern of consistent felonious crime that could bring it, but I don't mean like 10 years ago. I mean like the last
That's not a felony.
last 4 months, this person's had 2 DUIs, and those are things we would be concerned about. The biggest though is the sex offender registry.
No, I'm not concerned with if somebody's had 2 DUIs.
I am if they're driving a mobile missile.
Listen, that is on,
That's on us.
no,
They're saying,
hang
The
on.
assumption is that if you come into the city of Tullahoma
You're-
and you have our
wait.
stamp of approval on there, that we're okay with it.
Wait, no. It is not just because somebody has a business license is not an endorsement of their business. First of all, you have to look at this like it is a business. We are regulating the business. We are not regulating the individual that owns the business, nor should we be.
We do when we issue beer.
We're regulating the business and how you sell the beer and following state laws. We are not regulating or legislating the morality of an individual up here, and I will never be for that.
Yeah, I don't think the DUIs, because just the restaurant owner would have to drive to work as well. I mean, so.
That's not our business. Our business is the regulation of the business, the permitting process for the business, and what kind of, playing field can we make sure that they're adequately contributing to the Tullahoma sales tax and being accountable to our locality's laws. We are not regulating the individuals who are driving these food trucks as much as we are regulating the business aspect of it from a business permitting. And so we got to get out of this legislative morality, or I can't go for that.
Again, what I just to go back to the charge that Lori, Charles, and I were given is what do we think is best for the city of Tullahoma. We also know that it's your decision on what you believe is best for the city of Tullahoma, and whatever ordinance you enact, we will definitely follow and enforce. I think, honestly, I think sometimes your personal feelings come in. I'm looking at protection for my child. If my child would go to a food truck, what would I want to make sure, what would I feel comfortable with? And I know you can't say they're going to be comfortable if they go to a brick and mortar. I'm not saying that at all. The concern that we had to do with stationary versus mobile. And you can go look at it. I found it, and I didn't bring it because I didn't know if I would need it. There's research that shows, when it comes time for those that are having trouble getting employed because of sex offender registry, construction and mobile businesses such as food trucks were the ones that were most prominently mentioned. So from that perspective, we look at it as what, as citizens, would we want to see? But I do want to make sure it is definitely clear. These are our ideas, our thoughts, our opinions, also based off of those that we received from Winchester, Deckard. We looked at Manchester as well, Murfreesboro as well. And there are others that are also requiring those same background checks. I'm not sure if they've had any issues with that. I haven't been able to get contact with those different entities to see if they've had issues on the background checks, but those are best practices locally.
Far in the woods then, and sound like I'm arguing both sides of this, but by the same token, if you're concerned about sex offenders, and that's a place where a lot of sex offenders work, is it adequate to only check one person? What if one person is fine and he hires 5, 6?
And so what I would say, that is back to the owner. That would be back to the owner. So if the owner is hiring an employee to work in their food truck, that would be on them to determine if that background check is required of that person or not. And I don't know what their hiring and application process would look like.
Nor should we be in the business of regulating that.
Well, like if you
I think it's for informational purposes, and I think that's fine to have it. And I think it's fine for our law enforcement to know. I do not think it should be public record, and I don't think it's even a reason that you should be able to deny a permit necessarily, but it can be for law enforcement in order for them to be able to know, hey, when you see this food truck, this may be something you may want to be aware of, just so that you can, like, patrol in the streets kind of thing. It is not it's not for, we should not be in the business of regulating the business's business, in other words. We need to focus on, this should be about contributing to the locality sales tax rate, limit regulations. This is about not what's just best for the city of Tullahoma. This is about what can we legally do as far as regulation and what is feasible and limit the regulation.
And so I hear you, and I definitely am not looking to debate. I think probably assumption on my part that if the city of Murfreesboro and other cities have instituted in their ordinance that it might not be illegal. I did, and I've already let Sam go because he's got a long drive home. In looking at this was not a concern for Sam. From the conversation that we had, that was something that we were overstepping our bounds on.
No, I'm not saying that it's overstepping your bounds. I'm saying that as you only want to regulate that which you're willing to be able to expend the money to be able to have a check on or whatever. So again, lower regulations because it's on us to be doing the checks. And what is the reason for the regulation? You need to make sure that that is a reasonable state function.
So currently, if you get a special event permit or you get a vendor permit, you have to have a background check done. That's the way it is currently in the city.
Okay.
So I feel like this would kind of go in that same line.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with the background check, is with the caveat that those are not subject to public inspection and that it's only on the owner.
Well, actually, they are, because they're on our beer board. They're always in your packets,
Yeah.
but they're redacted.
Yeah, that there
Well,
is.
Sex offender is public record anyway.
Exactly.
Right, the parts that
Felonies are public, this is all public record.
And it's only felony. That's all we're looking for, felony.
I think you should only be looking for sex offenses.
Well, I think there's some felonies we should look at as well.
And that's.
I disagree.
And that's where we would seek.
These people have paid their dues to society. I'm not going to go into a reentry thing, but if they are out here, they are on parole, or they're not, and that is that we are not a courtroom. That's not our job. Separate roles of government, separate branches of government.
I'm okay with.
Everybody's got to have a job.
I'm okay with matching that was part of this, was coming to parity with those around us. And permission to obtain a background check of owners and operators of mobile vendor vehicles. The city reserves the right to reject an applicant if he or she, or in the case of an LLC corporation, its owners, is A, a registered sex offender, B, has been convicted of a felony in the past 10 years, C, has a chronic history of an unreasonable number and kind of moving vehicle violations as determined by the chief of police, or D, presents an unreasonable public health and safety risk based on past criminal history as determined by the chief of police. That's Winchester.
I don't like it.
I don't like it
I don't
either.
like it. It's way too over-regulatory.
Yeah. I know.
Way too. Everybody has
Too
to have a
subjective
job.
by
It's,
the
and
police
it's,
chief.
you should be encouraging people to be out here starting businesses and capitalism is a beautiful thing. Why are we trying to stop in that and say, nope, don't try to better yourself? I just feel like we're getting into a very political realm. It's not what we're intending to do.
My intention, and I think I can speak on
City
behalf,
administrators recognized. Give me your attention, please.
I think I can speak on behalf of Charles and Lori, and if I'm not, let me know. Our intention is, we're not looking to diffuse capitalism. I'm one of the most capitalistic persons you'll find. I think honestly, this is where we took on the responsibility for public safety and making sure that we are allowing business people in this community that are coming in from outside our community to make sure that we're putting the right people out for our citizens. And that's where we came from. That is strictly from a public safety perspective and nothing else.
But
I do have a question. I think it's
I'm not okay with it.
It's on section 9-809, general rules. It's under B1. If you look at that, it says no mobile district food vehicle. What is a mobile district food vehicle? That's not in the definition anywhere.
That was just an honest mistake. It's a typo. It's supposed to be no mobile food vehicle, mobile food trailer and/or food cart. We're talking about the central commercial district.
Delete the word district.
Yeah, the district was put in there by mistake.
I'm going on.
That same one. Why don't we want food trucks in our C1 commercial districts? Wouldn't that be a prime
But
area?
that's where the restaurants are.
But not all
Yeah,
restaurants.
You'd have to look at rent and everything else, right? How much do they actually pay? Do we actually have the rooms to support it? Are people like turning in going to cause traffic hazards and everything else? You just have to look at your central business district. If you look at every single food truck that I looked at, no one actually allows it in the C1 commercial zone. It's just protecting your downtown core, making it walkable.
Is that all that C1 is?
Yes.
C1's only downtown.
It's just downtown core, and we don't rezone C1. It's just, what's historically been there, so
Okay.
it's not very much
Okay,
area.
it's still a blanket prohibition. If you own land in downtown C1 and you want to put a food truck on it, if you're the landowner, we shouldn't be telling you no. I mean, that should be up to the individual landowners.
I mean, technically, you said the exact same about zoning, right? I
Which
mean,
only,
if
yeah.
we're going to make that argument, then we shouldn't have any zoning whatsoever.
Okay, now is not the time to be condescending to me, though.
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
being condescending.
I'm not being condescending,
We
that's not
shouldn't
how
be
that was meant
condescending
at
either,
all.
right?
But I'm just saying that if we actually have zoning districts, we're allowed to regulate the uses, right?
Sure, absolutely.
People are allowed to have R1 in housing, so it's just another extension of that. It's not,
No, I agree with having zoning districts. I've never said that we shouldn't have zoning districts. I'm just saying that if you have a commercial zoning, if you have a property that's zoned commercial and the business that you would like to put on that is a stationary food truck, let's say, or
By definition, aren't stationary.
actually, in here, there's some definitions that some are based on the mobile food trailers. Those would be covered under this. So like, if there's one that's like a coffee place that's in Winchester, and it's actually would be considered that. It's right up by the square. That would be one of those, right next to their downtown corridor that essentially by this definition, we would not allow here. If they own the property and they own the land and they want to do that, to me, it's over-regulatory. And if somebody owns the land, then as long as they're not on city property, I agree with, having some prohibitions that we shouldn't be given deference unless they have a special events permit or something like that. But I would like to go back one.
Well,
place further here, if we can go in order down this.
Let's follow the.
I think that we do allow that, though. If
can we
because
finish
there, if you look at the, like the Wawa Greek place that went in, over, like on down from Water's Edge Chocolate, they have a piece of land, I mean, that's, I think that's in the C1
This
district.
hasn't passed yet, so that's why they're there now. But if we pass this,
Well, but I think in that case, they own the land and, they can either choose to build a structure on it or have that food. So
They don't
am
own
I
the
correct about that? So like, say for
matter, they
instance,
own
the
it.
Wawa Greek food truck, they own that land, so they have it's not even really a stationary, is it stationary?
It is stationary, it's fixed to that site, so that would be just a mobile food truck trailer. They're stationary to that site for 365 days.
Right, okay, but, so in that's a C1 district?
That's C2, that's C2.
It's C2 district.
so C1 is just downtown technically, I think is what he's saying.
So just think downtown right now, we're pretty much, you have the Walgreens, where the graveyard is, all the way down to pretty much just South Jackson, a little bit before South Jackson. And then you got a little bit there where the old tannery is, where the Ollie's is.
220 West Lincoln is downtown, and I will say this, I don't own it, my family does, and we have tenants right there that have leases. Those tenants like to have food trucks on that property. It would be in the downtown corridor, and that would prohibit Miss O's, they've set up there, that would prohibit, there's a taco truck that's been set up there, and you know what, we own the land, and our tenants want those there, because it draws in business to them. Should you, the city of Tullahoma, be able to tell my father, who owns the land, in a downtown district, who pays property taxes, and those tenants who own the business, that no, that food truck would not be allowed to be in that parking lot?
What are you zoned right there?
C1.
It is C1, 100%?
It is, and it's in the downtown corridor.
Well, let's look, make sure.
I'm just giving you an example.
Well, how about London's little park there?
London's little park. Let's say Joe Keller decides he wants to put a food truck over there. You gonna tell him he can't?
If it's not impeding traffic
It
or-
seems like if they're, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the traffic thing.
It should be up to that individual landowner. What I'm saying is, limit the regulation. In no way should a food truck ordinance be multiple pages in regulation.
They're all, have you read any of these? Did you read any of the ones, examples that went out?
I did, and I can tell you that they're all over regulatory. Go back to section 9-804, because this is an opinion and not a fact. Mobile food vehicles and pushcart vendors are operating near and could affect the trade of established restaurants and could also have a negative impact on said restaurants that have invested in property and pay taxes in the city of Tullahoma. I do agree that maybe sometimes it could have an impact. I don't know that that impact is negative. At times, they could be a draw towards certain areas. So most of the time, people who are buying a meal at a food truck are not in the business of wanting to go in and eat. If anything, they are competing with McDonald's, Burger King, those who have drive-around, drive-through options. Because most people that are stopping at these food trucks are looking for something on the go that's relatively quick and easy. They're not looking to go in and sit down. So,
Your zone's
mobile, no, we're C1.
220 West Lincoln?
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the businesses.
Right there on the board, you see one.
I'm C1. I'm on the board. Yep. Now, well, it's 220, it'd be 218, 220, 216, and whatever Smith Window 10 is.
So
I don't know.
Can we finish addressing that? And what about just adding something, say,
as long
with
as-
permission from the landowner?
That's what I
And if it
said.
doesn't impede traffic or.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because there are other rules that apply, right?
So
Like,
no
it can't
blanket
be
prohibition.
within 50 or 100 feet of an existing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine with it if that's what y'all want to do, yeah.
Not within 100 feet of an existing unless you have the permission of that. They may want to do something together. They may want Miss O's Donuts to come hang out at the seafood place one day, across the road. You don't know. I mean.
Right, so can we just add that to, and finish that piece off before we
Okay.
move on to the next piece?
What section was that?
Section 809-809B1.
I just had this, hopefully a simple question. So is Forest Gallery the only one that opted out of Was everybody polled? Did we poll there? Because
We just reached out to a few. It was mostly Mr. Economic Director Winston Brooks.
I'll intervene there. At the meeting that Winston, the mayor, and I attended in Atlanta, I met with the Forest Gallery rep, and we were talking about several things, and one of the issues that he brought up was food truck, and he stated under no circumstance does he want a food truck anywhere in Forest Gallery. He referred back to the restaurants he has located in there. We do have a food truck vendor who has been asked by a tenant, Tractor Supply, to set up there, but my understanding is Tractor Supply doesn't have the authority to say who can and can't use that private property. So that was one that we knew of automatically that we put in there. There could be others at some point.
Wait, so go back to that example. That would be a contractual dispute between the landowner and the property owner. That would be something that is civil. That's not something for us to get in the middle of, unless they're sitting up on city property, not our business.
Okay, question. If someone is set up on a piece of private property, what do the police do if that person's trespassing?
If the landowner makes a complaint and says somebody is set up on my private property and I have not given them permission, then they are trespassing.
So Forest Gallery says, as
correct.
As the landowner, if they say, we do not want any food trucks anywhere in this property.
That is correct.
So then that was what he just said.
No, we're talking about
Forest
Tractor
Gallery.
Supply.
Right, Forest Gallery, is that Forest Gallery?
Okay.
That's Forest Gallery.
Okay, that's Forest Gallery, fine. So if that landowner says that, then obviously that's on them. You're trespassing, you could be, but that would be, again, it would be contractual between that person and another. Now, if they call you with somebody set up over there and they say, okay, these people are trespassing, could you go and do that? Then we can do that because that's criminal. Okay, but if it's a civil contractual dispute, I just feel like we should not get in the business of going, hey, do you have the permission, unless there's a complaint by the landowner.
Well, I understand, but here's a question that I do have, is we have several landowners private property owners, who do not live in Tullahoma. They may not live in the state of Tennessee. What obligations or responsibilities do we as a city and or our police have to protect their property? And they may not know that someone's set up. And, for us, then we definitely aren't going to call and try to track down somebody in North Carolina to say, hey, you've got a food truck, is that okay? Whereas a food truck could have just right there and say, hey, we've got it right here, we've talked to Kirk Glick in North Carolina, and he's given us permission to do that. And that's one where I just have to ask, what is our responsibility to property owners who may not be in town as to protecting their property?
The reason why I brought the question was that at least Forest Gallery, to me, by only listing one business, makes it look like, well, anywhere else is fair game, you can go set up.
And we could take that out, without a doubt. That was just one that we had at the moment, we just stuck that in there.
They could change their mind, and we don't want that written into our ordinance.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So that's an easy removal.
But we do need to publish that somewhere so that people.
Maybe as an addendum,
maybe not in an ordinance.
It's not for us to publish.
Hang on, but maybe not in ordinance but on the website. Well, because what we want is for food truck vendors to be able to come and say, okay, this is where, that's the marketing part of the city, right?
Yeah.
They want to be able to, at first glance, what we don't want them to do is come in, go through the paperwork and do all that, go set up at Forest Gallery, and then Tullahoma Police Department comes and says, hey, you're trespassing, you need to move. Because then they're going to say, well, why didn't you tell us that when we were talking to you?
I think it's common sense to know that if you're on any piece of property, it's got to be owned by somebody. And these
we know right now.
The food truck vendor, correct me if I'm wrong.
It's not for us to be the police force for a contractual issue for Forest Gallery either. Unless they make a specific complaint. We can't be there. That's not a complaint. A complaint is when there's somebody illegally set up on your property and you call and say, Ms. O's Donuts is illegally set up on my property. That's a complaint. We cannot do their bidding for them.
The food truck in question.
Yeah, we can't do that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The food truck vendor in question, Tractor Supply, did not know that they couldn't do that, and they felt like that Tractor Supply had the authority to tell them they could set up, not knowing that they didn't have that ability. I don't see, my perspective, I don't see the issue with if someone's setting up on somebody's private property to just have a piece of paper, something in writing that says, I've given them approval.
Oh, I agree. I just say that we have to be careful on what we want to police and what we don't. Unless there's a complaint about that, I don't know that we have to create a check on that.
I don't think it needs to be part of the ordinance, but if
That-
there was a list at City Hall,
Just put it
that, you
out
know, then when someone calls and has a complaint, there's a food truck on my property, I don't want it there, and they say, sure, we'll take care of that, you want us to add you to the list.
I got you.
So when
So
food
Yeah.
trucks
I
require,
will,
we could tell them not to.
again,
Okay.
not seeking to debate, but what about
Sure.
Let's listen to the city
What about,
administrator,
what about the
please.
fellow from Force Gallery? And Force Gallery has a pretty good presence, right? He's in Atlanta, and he's here quite often. He didn't know that that was happening. And so he doesn't know that he needs to call and add that to the list unless it comes out.
Well, there's something called adverse possession laws in the state of Tennessee. And so it's, when something is open and notorious, you have to have, you're liable for the open and notorious nature of whatever adverse possession is going on your property. City of Tullahoma is not. That's on you, the private owner.
But if we can help people out. and
I'm
just-
fine with helping
if we
people
can-
out. I'm not okay with putting it in our ordinance. I'm with
Not an
you.
ordinance, but a list.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we just said.
Generally,
Pull
when
it out,
someone
put it in a
comes
packet.
To get a food truck permit, they have a written permission of where they're gonna set up.
Yeah, well, that's what I
Yeah,
was
it
gonna say, this should fix all
That
that.
might
right?
change.
They have to get
Forest
it.
Gallery have something that says, sign up that just says,
But if someone's just inquiring.
you're not allowed to,
We could have little things
Try-
that
you know.
don't even try there.
Yeah, don't even try there. That's fine. But that's on the individual property owner to make that known.
Right.
You
Yeah, that's
know,
what I'm
but we
saying.
can, as a
if
courtesy,
they're
provide a
against it, they
list.
should probably put up a sign that says.
That's
no
fine. We're just saying don't
solicitation.
put it in the ordinance,
Right.
right?
Ms. Wilson is recognized.
I was just saying that, for that instance, for the Forest Plaza, that they really probably should put up a sign that just says no solicitation.
And they should, but
I
that's
think
not
they
on us
should.
to do that. But-
Right.
I would think.
I agree.
I would think most of those would have a no solicitation sign.
I haven't seen any at Forest Gallery. In fact, you often see,
That might
well, there's
solve all
basically an
that.
entire homeless camp right behind that sets up on their property. So we can say the homeless can be there, but you food truck vendors, you got to go. So my thing is, let's not get in the bidding of their business on what's on their property. And you see what I'm saying? Like, we can't, unless there's a specific complaint, to have them removed. Do I
So-
think that, yes, as a good practice, we should tell them, you need to have permission of the landowner from where you set up? That's great.
I think we all agree
But-
on this.
Yeah, we all.
I'm just telling,
From this, yeah.
I'm just telling her it should not be part of the, like, asking about what locations, as she brought up, what locations you're going to be set up at. I was actually going to,
I disagree. I think we need, as part of the permit, we need to know where you're gonna set up.
but it's a yearly permit, so
But
how do they know, and when they come in to get that permit, every location they're going to set up at over the next 12 months?
And let's get us in line.
One of the,
Before they can come in to get a permit. When they come in to get a permit, they have to come in with a written permission from where they're going to set up.
There's not going to
Is that
be
correct?
one location because it is mobile. So again, that is, I don't agree with that being part of the permit process, is what I'm telling you, it's unfeasible. If it's a yearly annual permit, they wouldn't know on day one every location that they could potentially set up, because if you're in the business of finding new locations to set up, you may change locations on that's the whole premise of the great capitalism behind food trucks. You're going to change locations and change them often. And they should not, it's not our business. As long as they have permission from wherever they're set up from, it's not our business to know from day to day or wherever for 1 year total, 365 days, you better give us a calendar of where you're going to be. No, that's over-regulatory. Get out of their business. Let's stop making rules for games that we don't even play. Please.
I do have a question about the signage. On Y, letter Y, section.
Are we closed out on that one before we move on to the next? I think so. Are we all?
No,
Okay.
no.
Well, I just want to make sure, so we're not skipping back around.
9-809, general rules and regulations, on letter Y, for the signage. So, the no separate freestanding signs, is that more of, because of, a trip hazard if there's not enough room? Or what if there was plenty of room and then they can have the sign?
So what we were thinking is we don't want a bunch of, what are the shark signs, the flag signs that you have up everywhere else. That was more the thinking there. It's just pretty much, we've seen it over the last couple of months since we haven't been able to enforce, and since we're still, doing some research and writing on that. They're just flying up everywhere. So that was just more thinking on that. Just, we do not want flag signs. We don't want the little wavy man.
I gotcha. I was just thinking in my mind of those wooden ones that with the chalk.
Yeah, so
Sandwich sign.
Sandwich, what I was
Sandwich
thinking,
sign.
sell,
Sandwich
sell
So you
today.
can have those.
So, yeah, that wasn't even in the thinking. I actually brought the rule here, the Reed versus Town of Gilbert, the one that we're having to adjust in our sign, just so they're aware that, that's not what I was thinking. But, yeah, we weren't going to enforce that any kind.
Okay. Then, yes,
And that was what we were doing, is we know that there's a new sign ordinance coming, and we've been working on that. It's easier for us to right now say, hey, none of these freestanding signs, and go back and say, but you can have this, this, and this, versus going ahead and in the beginning saying you can have this, and then take it away. That would obviously over-regulatory.
How about you just don't address it, and then, we can always amend it if our sign ordinance changes or if it becomes an issue. Don't address it until it's an issue.
Honestly, I've seen, and this is an issue that has nothing to do with food trucks, but these wavy shark fin flags or whatever, I've seen business owners who have put them in the right-of-way, and where people are looking to take a left turn, and they can't see beyond that flag, and I've seen 2 cars over the past month almost get clipped because it was in the right-of-way.
I do agree in those circumstances.
And so especially if you are coming up to a right-of-way, and you're not used to having a food truck there to begin with, and then they came on Tuesday, they weren't there Monday, but they came on Tuesday, and now there's a flag up, I'm going to try to navigate that left turn, and there could be an issue. That's a concern that I would have from
Right.
a
Well,
flag
it's
that's
but
there
think
one
about
day
it.
and not the next.
Think about it, your concern is where the location of the flaggy wavy thingy is, not necessarily the flaggy wavy thing. So we have in our city ordinance that you're not to put any signs in the right-of-way, ever. So nobody should have a sign in the right-of-way. That's not central to this food truck ordinance. That's why I say leave it out.
Again, this is where we're bringing you the document that we felt was best for the city.
Oh, no,
Well,
I'm not knocking. This is our job, is to revise it.
That's what I'm saying, so if
yeah.
that's, however you want to adjust that, we're,
You know what, though, the only thing, and I agree with you, but the only reason why that we might want to put it in there is for someone who doesn't know what the sign ordinance is, or when they're thinking about a food truck.
It kind of helps the food truck vendor.
It may,
They can look at one.
if it's in here, then they don't have to look in multiple places for
Then
it.
I would put that no signs are allowed in the right-of-way.
So I like Manchester's, which is pretty much the same as ours, right? And Winchester's different from Manchester in that it specifies you can have one sandwich board type sign within 10 feet of, but I also agree, do we want to just leave that out until, but,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's just the town of Gilbert versus Reed. We can't actually just distinguish that sign.
oh, that's right.
So,
because-
I put it in here, and that was just to make sure that everyone was aware of it, but no way was I ever going to say that no one can't actually have a sign to put this food special. And then it's also, if I get into it, it's just, whatever size we decide, then they have to go out and buy a sign,
Right.
So I just think it's better to love that just kind of understood, that everybody kind of understands that, that's just part of them doing business, they're going to have that sign there.
Can we take out that number 3 in section 9-804, just because I believe it's more opinionated than fact?
Can we go back, can we stick on one and finish it and then go back?
Well, I had already mentioned this earlier.
Bobby's talking about the signs, can we sign off on the sign piece first and then come, it would probably help to go through it number by
I
number.
do think it would be helpful to have something, in there on the sign issue so that if somebody didn't previously know that you couldn't have a sign in the right of way, that it would be easy for them to find if they're a food vendor, they can just
Maybe-
look in this one document.
Yeah, or can you allude to the sign ordinance in the document?
Yeah, based on our ordinance, sign ordinance, blah, 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 don't put a sign in the right of way.
I'm okay with it how it is for right now because it's at parity with Manchester, Winchester, and Deckard.
I really could care less whether it's in parity with Manchester.
Well, that way when they
Winchester,
go from
and
place to
Deckard.
place, they know what to expect.
Right, and I think that was, when Alderman Berry asked us to do that, that was one of the things, is we didn't want to create a burden where you have to do one thing different in Manchester. If you come to Tullahoma, it's
Yeah.
totally different, and Winchester was totally different. And so we were trying to make it where if they're conforming with one city, then hopefully that means they're conforming with the majority of the other two cities outside of, difference in, some ordinances, or some ordinance language.
Then you just pack up and you go. You don't have to have something special for Tullahoma, and then something special for Manchester, and then something special for Winchester. It's just the same.
For 9809, number D, letter D, it's the highlighted, and I'm sure there's a legal reason for this, but I don't understand why you only have to have a business license if you live in the city of Tullahoma.
You don't. You have to have a business license regardless. But the way the state set this up, when they set up food trucks, they didn't know how they would discern money and sales tax in different cities. So whatever city or county you live in, so if you live in the city of Winchester, you have to get your business license from them. So they get all the sales tax from your sales.
Whoa.
That's,
Well,
Well, it's the TN tap.
no,
Do they have to go through TN tap to do
they have to
your
go
sales tax?
through it, but
We don't
there
get that
is,
money.
we get no money.
Wait, but isn't there,
Unless there's no way for them to regulate it. I called just to be sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to know the
Yeah, that makes
difference
sense.
in a contractor. Why did a contractor have to get a business license in every city they worked in? And they said because he pulls permits, he knows how much money he spends and makes there. There's no way to do that with a food truck. That was my
well,
answer.
Amazon sends packages everywhere,
So-
and they pay taxes
wait,
based
I did,
on the
wait,
place
wait,
they
wait,
send the
wait.
package.
There is a way to know because they set up different locations, so they're
They are
using.
not,
But the state's
Hang
not
on, can I
tracking
finish my
Yeah,
thought?
well, and then
Wait just a minute.
Pure honesty,
Let me finish my thought.
for them to say where they make their money.
That's on their record keeping. So when you're doing your TN tap and there's a sales locality, I have 5 fireworks tents and they're in 5 locations and the different locations get the fireworks money. There's a separate TN tap per location.
there is not on a food truck.
No, what I'm saying is there could be.
I know, but we have to go by the state law.
No, we don't change that. They set that up.
No, the
No.
state changes that law.
No, that's a state law.
The state, you gotta work with the state to change that.
That's a state.
Wait, I'm misunderstanding you. Yes. How is it different for a food truck than it is for a fireworks stand? I guess
Because
that's my
they,
question.
when they made the food truck, that's the way they made it.
So the food
state.
truck law, the state laws is they only have to pull one TN tap account, in
One.
other words.
One.
And-
So they
And
have,
it's only where they reside.
and only where they
And that'll have to
reside.
be changed at the legislation.
Yes.
Yeah.
We cannot change
And so-
Oh, okay, that was what,
that. So,
yeah.
if you live in the city limits of Tullahoma, that's the only way you would pull a Tullahoma business license.
And then that particular vendor would, those sales tax would make it back to Tullahoma. If you're outside, that does not.
That's
And
the
so,
only time.
That makes sense.
so the revenue,
Yeah.
the only revenue really, and, this is not about revenue, but the only revenue that Tullahoma realizes from the food truck ordinance is the $250 permit fee. That's it,
Yeah.
on an
Yeah,
annual
plus-
basis.
Whatever
there's the
food
30
trucks are local, to Tullahoma as far as their residents. Yeah, if they're a resident of Tullahoma and they've pulled their business license
Right.
here, then
We
doesn't
will
matter
get
where
the
they
check.
go, we're getting their.
And what I would see is based on what we've kind of gathered, there's definitely a lot more food trucks outside of Tullahoma.
Than
As far as
inside.
owners, there's quite a few more
We have very few
outside.
that live
yeah.
in the city limits.
And just for further clarification, met with Lori and then also with Sue Wilson, our finance director, and she could not recall and could not locate any sales tax that had ever been submitted on behalf of a food truck to the city of Tullahoma in her time here.
That makes more sense about the permit fee being a little bit higher since you can't delineate between the sales tax.
Right.
I wonder if we made, if you were a food truck owner, pulled a Tullahoma business license because you lived here, you didn't have to pay the $250 fee.
I think I like that idea.
And that's one of the things that we've looked at, we've talked about. Ironically, and I know, again, we want to be Tullahoma and we don't want to be everyone else, there is a local city that had that where $500 annual permit fee if you were not a resident of their county. If you were a resident of their county, it was $300. They have now changed their ordinance to where it's $300 whether you do or you don't. And as for the reasoning, there wasn't really a reasoning that was given to me on why that occurred. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't do that. I'm just giving you, that's the only one that I've come across that had a variation of within county and outside.
Well, I think since you're still going to do the background fee, then you need to do, I think it should be, I like $50 for those who are pulling it and we're getting those that sales tax money, and keep it the $250 for those who are not.
And one of the things I would request of the board is, if you're all in agreement of what that number should be, if we have that now,
just because that
is something that we can go ahead and incorporate versus at the actual board meeting, then we're trying to figure out what that fee was. So if there's any consensus from the board, that would just help the process of our next board meeting.
Well, my response to that would be, let's just not pull a number from the air. What's it cost? What is it? Give me a cost on the time that it's going to take your department, the cost of anything that we've got to do. I mean, you don't have to give that now, but my answer would be, let's just not pull numbers out of the air.
So,
and same to the 250 is, what's it cost?
So what we will do between now and the next board meeting is we'll get that cost to you on what we see our anticipated costs for that program, and then, that'll just be more data for you to make that
I
decision.
obviously want to make money off tax revenues, right? But at the end of the day, I am a fan of food trucks, and there is that quality of life thing there. So it is good for our people. It's good for our business owner, or our businesses like the billing place and the base and things like that. But I also want to make sure that our costs are covered, right?
I have a question. And talking on that, when you say the cost, do you mean like
your time to
right.
file?
But when you're looking at a $250 permit fee, we're looking at that because we're getting no sales tax.
Yes.
Yeah. So number one, let's actually know, because maybe the actual cost is I'm just picking a number, right? Maybe our actual cost is $125, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe that $250 needs to be higher if we're looking to recoup some of those tax dollars. Okay. But if we're just kind of randomly picking that, and I'm not saying that you haven't, but what I'm getting at is we need to actually know what it.
And the part of the harder data that it'll be almost impossible to capture is what sales tax revenue we're losing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't consider that.
Yeah, exactly. We can't.
The costs are going to be more than the fees anyway, so I don't think that's a reason. I mean, the
cost, the fee should cover the cost, right?
No.
Because the fee should cover the cost, because
they're not
then
the
you're putting the cost on a taxpayer.
They may be. Everybody that comes to this city, period, is a taxpayer, and they are bringing business. When you put a Miss O's out in front of that flooring store, do you know what Miss O's does? She brings in people. They not only buy donuts, but then they go, "Hey, what's over here in this store?" While I'm standing out here in this parking lot.
I've been there like 4 times and have yet to go into any of those stores there when I went and stopped and got donuts, because I want to get my donuts home while they're still hot and eat them.
Yeah, well, that's you.
That's not just me.
And no, I'm saying that is you. That ultimately, yes, when people are pulling into these, and there are other things out there, the marketing aspect of getting somebody to pull into a parking lot, first and foremost, is drawing them into that location. And so you can say that people are not contributing to the local sales tax, but they are in ways that you can't measure.
I think we all agree on that. I think we all agree
Yeah, you
there.
definitely get walk-in business.
Yeah, I
that you
agree.
normally
I think
wouldn't.
that drives the economy, but we should still cover costs.
I understand, but they are paying it.
Yeah, they are
She just said, well, her response to you was, the reason for this is because they don't pay the sales tax.
Yeah, but there is a big, that is a fact.
Well,
So we are
I'm
not
going
getting,
in
as the
circles
city of
now.
Tullahoma is not getting tax dollars from that. Do they help? Will a certain percentage of people who go and visit, there's 2 taco trucks that I love. I go to Wawa Greek probably at least once a week, but when I stop there, I don't go anywhere else.
Honestly, my opinion is these guys right here have such a loyal following, I'm not sure how many people are pulling in to go to the flooring store because they see Miss O's, they're cutting over 3 lanes of traffic and trying to get in there. It will happen, but I think the majority of their traffic comes from brand awareness and people are aware of them. And when they see that truck, that color, whatever, they're going to run over to that.
It may not happen that day, but when you pull in and you go, oh, look, they're having a sale on such and such, I need to remember that next week when I'm coming through here to do X, Y, or Z. It may not happen and be tangible in that moment, but they're getting people to stop and shop and draw in. And yeah, you're right. Miss O's, they may be driving from Winchester because Miss O says she's in Tullahoma today. Okay, so they're going to come all the way over here. They're going to buy gas. They may stop and go through and buy something else. So my thing is,
Still, yeah, but it's like
We're dealing with opinion.
Yeah, and it's kind of a thing that just we get a bonus from, but you can't quantify it because, I mean, by that same token, you could say, well, let's not make Publix pay any taxes at all because when people come into town to shop at Publix, they shop at all these other places, So, I mean, you're kind of saying the same thing, so.
well, we kind of did with the TIF. So, just saying.
I mean, we're talking tens of millions of dollars probably just brought in. But that would go for 122 or anybody, anyone else.
I just
I think,
threw out a name.
Let me summarize what I think that we're saying is, let's get a cost on what it costs. And I think that we all had semi-agreed on if they're in Tullahoma, they live in Tullahoma, they've got a Tullahoma business license, we look at maybe just paying the cost and then have a separate fee for non-Tullahoma residents to be determined based off of what that cost is.
And trying to recapture some of the lost tax revenue.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even if we say the fee was $400, that's not going to recapture any. We'd have to charge them thousands of dollars.
Yeah, well, I mean, a little bit makes you feel better.
It makes you feel a little.
I'm not going to be comfortable with it being any higher than we've already.
So if you do a decent number, like 250, you're probably going to get more people that buy permits.
I think I'm comfortable with
And-
it.
The other locations are all Murfreesboro is $50.
Winchester's 300.
But Winchester's is 300, and they're about to have a
Deckard's is
lot of pushback over that
Deckard's is
$300 too.
$250.
They did that back in June.
I'm not sure when.
So-
What I will tell you is, and I've spoken to this several times in our meetings and whatnot, this fee is not for us to try to regain tax revenue, because that's just not going to happen. But it is to, what you're talking about, Alderman Berry, we're looking to cover our costs. It's not a profitable thing for us to do, but again, I think, I truly believe that in the end, this will set up our food truck program in the city of Tullahoma to be ones that others will emulate. Couple of things real quick, as we talk about this, our goal is, once this ordinance is passed, is we want to set up a committee, a council, and a little association where we have consistent dialogue with our food truck vendors on special events we could come up with, other ways that we can support them within the confines of the ordinance, but definitely what can we do to help promote their business, because we don't want to bring them here and not help promote it, but at the same time, we've got to make sure that we're covering our costs in order to do so.
Mr. Rush, do you need any?
Yeah, I'm not done. We haven't even gone through all of this.
Yeah, I've still got a list of questions from
Yeah.
people from the group and some recommendations. One of those is the time. I had somebody reach out, like they'd like to do breakfast, and
Are you referring?
No, I'm sorry, let me find it in
We've got so many pages in our head.
Yeah,
right now.
you're, let me find the,
I think we changed it to 6:30 to 9.
what about like 5 to 11?
Yeah. I mean, that was just to let police and fire know if they're going to be operating outside their normal hours in case there's not a patrol over there and they're just isolated by themselves, just for safety concerns. So that's not that we're regulating the time that they can, it's just for them to make us aware so we can pass that on to the right source.
Okay, Q,
Hang on, did we come to a resolution on that? My suggestion is that somebody they want to catch aero traffic or the second, third shift people doing breakfast. You're not going to do that at 6
Aero
o'clock.
traffic, what decade are you living in?
Hey, we knew what this.
ADC or some of this early factory traffic that's coming in at, 5, aero, man, that is old. But that would be something that I would.
Here's the thought, could you do dusk to dawn? What that does is that doesn't set you to a specific time of when you can open and a time when you can't stay open. You just so dusk to dawn.
Yeah, but like right now, dusk is 4.
yeah, no, I don't.
Well, and there's a food truck that operates over at the brewery, and it's in the evening.
Yeah, and it's like at night, I don't think we need to regulate their business.
But there should be a time when it cuts off, I mean,
The business
especially
of their
for,
business
because
is
they're
what
near a
I mean.
neighborhood, so.
Yeah.
If it's profitable,
There needs to
stay
be
open
a
late,
definite
stay
time
open
that it
late.
cuts off.
That's for them to
so
determine
that-
their hours. Can we go to?
Can we finish that one? Did we come to any sort of, do you guys know the direction on that?
I would say unless the property owner or the business could determine the hours they operate. You know, a property owner may say, I don't want you operating on my property, and that's up to him after a certain hour. But on the other thing, the person that owns the food truck, they're only going to stay there as late as it's profitable to be there, and I want them to stay there as late as it's profitable.
Can you just take it out? Why are we regulating the business of the business?
Can
We
we
aren't
finish?
opening a food truck business.
Can he finish his comment, and then let him respond to that comment, and then move to your comment, and let him respond to that, so that we can, I'm getting lost in all of this, right? So let's do this in some sort of organized fashion, where you
I
finish
think I
with
was
yours.
done if you understood what I was getting
Yeah, I
at.
thought he was.
Can you
I'm sorry.
respond to that?
Can I be honest with you? I don't remember what his question was.
Okay,
I'm
talking
sorry.
about the operating hours for the food trucks being set, to me, that ought to be just the property owner could regulate it however late they want them there, or they may have a cutoff time.
I would agree. If these gentlemen are really, truly looking to run a business, they're not going to stay if the need's not there. So
They're going
really,
to
you
stay
leave
as
it
late
up
as
to
it's
them.
profitable to be
Yeah, they're not
there, and
gonna
when it's
tick, I
not
guess they're not
profitable,
gonna
they'll
tick off the
go.
neighborhood.
And that's what they ought to do,
That's
if they
right.
want to.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, just take it out.
I'm good with that.
That's,
Lord.
in, I think we decided that needed to be taken out.
In for,
In Central Commercial District.
In what?
That we're on the same, that was at I.
What we
So
said
now
there
we're at-
was unless given permission by the property owner.
Within 100 feet is what I had to.
100 feet of a, not of a property owner, of another
Business.
restaurant. Yeah. Central Commercial District. You have that in another place about the.
Which page are you on?
Yeah, I've got
Right
it.
here.
That was just feedback that I'd gotten.
Yeah,
We added
so you don't have to add that back in there on in. I would just take out in, honestly, altogether, because we've already said that they can't operate on anything that they don't have permission to be on anyways. I would just take it out.
809, thank you.
So if you take out in, then my next one was R.
whoa,
Whoa, hang on, and
hold on. I want to make sure.
9-809.
There's only one N and R.
Yeah,
So talk about commercial. So
Yeah.
you're saying take that out.
take it out.
commercial districts.
Because we said, just like we'd already discussed earlier, only with permission. Well, we've already said that you have to have permission, so there's no point in it being in.
Or just add to that, or with
All right, so
permission.
help me here, and I may be totally off, I'm sure I am. If I own a property on Southwest Atlantic, or Northwest Atlantic, I'm next to Spinelli's, and if I own the building 100 feet down, and I own that property, can I put in a pizza food truck?
Nope, because you're within 100 feet.
It's
of
within
another.
100 foot.
I'm 101 feet.
Then yes.
Nope, well, there's not going to be anywhere downtown except by her property.
You wouldn't
You'd
have.
be in a right of way.
Because that businesses don't own the,
I'm just,
I get
Because you
what
wouldn't,
I get what
it'd
he's,
be in the right of way, right, because it's a sidewalk?
it has happened. I get what he's saying.
or take up 5 or 6 parking spaces.
A parking
I get what you're
spot.
saying.
That's where my concern is, and I know some of it's outlandish, like nobody would ever do this.
But they did.
Well, was it the city property or was it privately owned
Building
property?
down there, like next to the buildings, do you own the parking lot?
Oh, well, we already had that addressed in the other section. It's not city property. We're talking about privately owned
Then
property.
That's impeding traffic, it's like the right of way, right? Isn't that the public right of
Hey,
way?
the deal was city property. They can't be on city property anyway, so we don't have that in here. That would be city property. We're talking about privately owned property, like any other privately owned property. They still have to meet the 100 foot, but past that, I mean, I don't think there's really any discussion. I don't know why we would regulate that.
I think I'm just looking at our central commercial district.
Yeah,
restaurants that are
my
down
family
there.
owns property in your central commercial district, and we want to have food trucks on it.
But we added an exception to the other place, so just add that same exception to here.
We don't need to be adding exceptions for individual property owners. We need to have
No, as long as
blank,
it's on.
we own it. If you own it, just like somebody else, if they own a piece of property in C1 and they want to do that with their property, that is their business.
As long as it's not,
As long as it's not within 100 foot, they still have to meet
Or
that.
they wouldn't be able to be on the sidewalk
Yeah.
because the
They
sidewalk.
can't be on the sidewalk, can't be in the right of way, can't be on city property.
They couldn't be in the parking
Outside of those
spaces 'cause they
things,
don't own those.
all right,
get out of
I'll concede on that.
Yeah.
That could be in Jenna's lot or
yeah.
Joe Kelly's.
Miss O's, you coming, baby, you coming, okay? Y'all come, 220, my flooring stores, my flooring, I say mine. I don't know nothing, I don't make any profit off of it, but I get donuts out of it, and I can stop and buy some donuts. So, anyways, our unattended mobile food vehicles, this was basically saying that they could not be left attended or stored on a vending site when vending is not taking place or outside of the allowed hours of operation, since we're doing away with hours of operation. Also, if it's on private property, not for us to determine. They may want to set up there for multiple days in a row. There'd be no sense in them having to take it all down, move it back again.
Where are you? I'm sorry.
That's
R.
our.
Take out R, that's up to them and the property owner.
So I'm just thinking of the ones that are down on Carroll, why am I blanking? There's a couple food trucks over there,
On the right-hand side of the department?
By the viaduct?
Yeah, that's by the viaduct.
They would have to move every night if we pass this.
Well, this says the exception is an applicant who has a permanent site.
That's not a permanent site.
Are they considered?
It's considered permanent by our codes. Once you add that trellis, that foundation, it becomes permanent. That's our planning codes.
Y'all get that's kind of mobile. You can kind of add that on the go.
But it's by our codes, it is considered permanent. Once you add that in there.
Okay, well, I don't like it. I think it's over regulatory. Can we just take it out? I don't see the purpose in it.
How about we pull the board before?
It's not you.
I mean, that's why I said that.
I agree with it.
What was the
I
last?
agree with you on that.
On in? So Laura would like us to be polled on in and on R.
I'm fine with what we agreed to on N.
N was to take that.
Yeah, to take it out. We didn't poll everybody. That was only.
Bobby, N.
So you mean to take N out completely?
Yeah, because we said that it wouldn't apply, like, if it's, we've already got already got something in here about city property, where you can't be on city property, you can't be within 100 foot, you can't be in the right of way, so anybody that's left, they ought to have the authority to say, I want you on my property. There's very few places. 220 West Lincoln is one of them.
Are you
Yeah, that's fine.
polling- Are you polling the board? Is that what you're-
Trying to. I'm okay with that.
What'd you say?
I'm okay with taking that out since we've already kind of addressed.
Okay, Derek.
Leave it.
Leave it.
Take it out.
Take it out.
Leave it.
Leave it.
Oh, so Ms. O's, I guess they're saying you can't set up in my, I want an exception then with like the other one then.
We already added the exception, Jenna.
How did we add
It's
the
all
exception?
the one that we talked about earlier.
Unless given permission. by the
Yes,
property
it's
owner.
already there. If we
Where
weren't-
is it at?
If we weren't, it's not in here because we just
in
discussed it
809B1.
tonight,
Well,
right?
surely. But
There's
it's,
nobody
but I'm in
Harry
Central
Pottering
Commercial
words.
District. I'm in Central Commercial
If you
District.
go back to the one that if we weren't jumping around the way we were, we could follow this a little bit more. But when we go back to where we were earlier, and it said, no truck shall operate in the, where is this?
9809B1.
No, we all agreed right there that we were gonna add the exception except in case of the,
Unless you have
whatever.
permission by the property owner.
Yeah, so if we weren't skipping everywhere.
So why do we have it again and in as something different?
It's not different.
Okay,
We
then
just
I-
add the same exception to the same one, to that one as well, and then the two are the same.
But why do you need it in there twice is my question.
I think it's a,
Let's pull R.
No, we're not going to R. Tell me why you need it there twice. What's the difference in in, because then I don't understand it.
I don't know how to explain it any differently.
If it's already addressed in B1, what is the difference in in?
Central Commercial District, so I'm.
Why have in there? What is the difference? What is the regulation?
I think because this part talks about parades, concerts, festivals, things like that authorized by the
But
state.
that's already addressed in another place too.
It was just for clarification. When we actually sat down with the citizens, that when they wanted to express their concerns with the food trucks, they highlighted a few areas that they wanted clarification, so I went back and actually added it on to a
it's
couple more.
basically saying the same thing and
Yeah, it does. I don't understand.
So it was just clarification on their board. That's how- that's how-
Okay,
So the
so
citizens
we didn't want
asked
to
to
double it up. Everybody that
clarify
voted leave
Yeah,
it,
food
you want it
trucks.
doubled.
That-
Got
that-
it.
That's some of the areas that
Yeah, it doesn't
highlighted,
hurt,
so
I
I
guess.
added it multiple times.
But add the exception to R as well.
Oh, R?
Or N, yeah. So add the exception to N as well.
so it's consistent.
Yeah.
Pull it up.
Okay, so on R.
I think that ought to be up to the property owner if they want to let a food truck stay there overnight.
I think it ought to be up to the property owner.
Yeah, I mean, if the property owner says that somebody can be out there for 2 days, it shouldn't be us that says they can't be, I guess.
So is Bobby a yes? Leave it?
No,
Or take it
correct.
out? Bobby, yes, take it out?
Yes.
Derek?
Leave it.
Mayor?
Leave it.
Jenna?
Take it out.
Kurt?
Take it out.
Leave it.
Leave it.
I cannot believe y'all right now. Why?
You have another?
Yeah, I mean, is
But why?
I would
Why are
like
we
to know
regulating what people have on their
the
property?
reason. I mean, there's probably a good reason why you want them to move every night.
Why do you want them to move every night if they're gonna be there for 3 days?
If the property
I mean-
owner says that
And
they
it's
can.
not our property, it's not city property. Jerry, why do you want people telling other people what to do on their property?
I think when you're dealing with situations like this, I think there has to be regulatory things that go on, and it has no saying whatsoever about whose property it is.
But it is saying it's private property
Well, it could be
and
private
a private
property,
business.
but we have addressed this over and over and over and over.
I
So you're
mean,
just saying leave it because you're ready to go?
I agree there has to be
I've been
regulations.
ready to go since I got here.
I agree there has to be
My God.
regulations, but
It's consistent
There-
with Manchester,
there needs-
Winchester. We've polled.
okay, there needs to be a reason why we have a regulation though, and I just,
It's mobile. It's mobile. If they want to do it fixed, then they can do it fixed, and they can do it permanent. There is a pathway to that in here and in our codes.
Okay.
So if you want to leave it fixed, then there are ways to do that and address that. But if you want the advantages of it being the mobile and you want to fall under that category, then it is mobile and those are the rules.
So they're going to find ways to make it fixed overnight.
Well, then that's
And then
fine.
they're going to unfix it the next day.
Well, that's
Y'all go ahead
fine.
and do that, but that's ridiculous.
That's
Okay.
fine then.
Whatever, overregulation at its finest.
You
Don't even have a
another-
reason why.
Do you have another?
Yeah, X.
What's your?
We're regulating the side of the vehicle that faces where? What's the purpose?
Where are you?
X.
Still in the same
No.
X.
809.
I'm not against regulation, I'm against regulation that has no reason behind it. If you just regulate and regulate, that is not why we are up here.
It's mostly just for the sidewalk. You're facing the curb, you're facing the
Not
sidewalk.
everything, you're assuming there is a sidewalk.
I would say most times they're probably going to be a sidewalk. I mean, if you look up to where they're going to be setting up, I mean, I drove around quite a bit, and most times they did have a sidewalk somewhere.
Also, that could be for public safety too. You would want to
It's
see what's
really-
going on.
But then, I think, if you look at the large mall, I think there's that exception in the next sentence that said if you're a mall, you probably can't do that, like in a large parking lot.
I just feel like it's,
Public safety, so police officer, if they're driving by, for the safety of the vendor, for the safety of the people sitting there, they're able to
Well,
drive
the
by
people
at night
lined
and
up
see
in
that.
lined up at the
Well,
window,
again, I go
getting
back
out in
to,
the road.
I think about kids.
Well, you can't, you
Kids
gotta be
and-
10 feet off of a right
If
of
it
way.
makes
Close
it
to it,
safer, then
right.
I'm for it.
That was the thought process, was just the safety aspect of it.
Well, and also food that's prepared outside of it,
Yeah, well,
that's not,
unfortunately,
yeah,
there's
it
a lot
needs
of
to be,
rules.
that's not what, you know, we can't regulate that, it needs to be what is on the inside, so I'm okay with that one.
fine, I'm not gonna debate that one. Just wanted to know why. DD,
Generators, most of the time they're going to be next to residential use, so we wanted to keep that noise down. We've worked with them. I think the first time I had an inverted generator, about 60 decibels. We kind of did some research and we thought 80 was pretty fair, and I think they didn't have a problem with that because most of their generators.
I agree with that.
under
'Cause some of those generators, you can't think straight.
What's our, we have a noise ordinance. Does that specify any decibels in our noise ordinance? It doesn't, does it?
No, it's a lot older, so I don't think it was actually a thought at that time.
Yeah.
And we can't allow somebody that has some old, like, beat-up generator
And
that's like, you know, like next to your house.
That
Well,
was
I
the
know at
thinking.
Or your business.
Well, I
Well,
think
at the
maybe-
at the
can we
4th
just
of
say in
July, we
residential
used to
areas?
make them use our generators. We wouldn't,
Well,
at the 4th,
Yeah.
when I was with the city anyway, we used to say you have to use our generators or our power, you can't bring your own generator. Just because of that, you didn't want somebody bringing in some real loud,
Yeah.
and we're running a concert and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want it by your business either, your business
No.
or your residential, or
I think that's a good one.
when you start getting into other people's.
It's hard to work whenever you're,
I'm okay with that.
And that's OSHA too. I looked up the OSHA standards, and that was pretty much dead on for that, for
There
noise.
is a class of generator called a quiet running generator that's, yeah, but they sound good.
is it 1 to 3 zones, because that's the sweet spot.
Janet, did you have any other?
The exception, the city of Tullahoma is exempt from any and all of the requirements of the above listed. Are we operating food trucks?
No, it's just because it's actually freezer park, right there next to the high school. We said 500 foot, so if we actually do one day actually, make a mobile food truck event, we would have to get permission. So it's just kind of exempt us from some of those requirements that we have set.
But we're not going to food truck business.
No, we're not.
Personally.
But we
We
couldn't
gotta
have
follow our own
done
rules.
we couldn't have done the Veterans Day
Yeah.
that we just did.
So it's just, there was a couple issues, and it was just easier in case we missed something to make us kind of.
I don't like it. I think saying that we can make exceptions is not good. If we can't follow it, we shouldn't have it.
I think I kind of agree with that. Is that your pen?
Now, are you done?
Yep.
500 foot from schools, is that just the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, that was just what I saw. That was just the norm, so I just pulled that from the research.
Again, though, if a school asks for a food truck vendor to come on, they have to get specific permission from the school board or the school system, and, I think it was director of schools designee or whatever,
Yeah,
which means it
school
could be
board designee.
the principal, so the principal could say, I want this food truck, so there is that exception.
And the vendor could also go to the school system and get an
Yeah,
exception?
exactly, and that's just, sexual offenders and everything else. That's just the only way that we could kind of protect schools and let them police themselves for that, to that regards.
Time restrictions, we talked about that. Generator loudness, we talked about that. Restrictions of parking.
Did we
talked
have a
about-
consensus on the signage?
Which is why?
Thought we were leaving it
Is that what,
finishing it.
just leaving it as it is?
I'm fine with leaving it. What about the last one? I guess we're going to allow the city of Tullahoma to not follow our own ordinance? Is that what we're deciding?
Yep, well, I'm good with that.
Allowing us not to follow our own one?
Yep.
That's great.
So we can do events like.
I don't agree with that.
Right.
Well, do we need to pull? Bobby, where are you on that one? Allowing exceptions?
So, obviously, would we still be able to have like the 41A and would we still be able to, you know what I mean? Like,
What would it violate?
Oh, yeah.
So they pull a special.
would we be able to have like our Journey concert?
What would it violate?
So if a special event like 41A or the concerts, that's a special event permit.
Oh, gotcha, yeah,
And
that's true.
so then they would allow them, because they would sell them spaces to set up.
Could we do our Veterans Day food truck thing we just did?
That's not, well, there was a special event pulled for that.
Special events.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for us to ever not follow it. So I just think it
Unless we
looks
wanna-
bad to say we don't have to follow our own rules.
Like Winchester
rules
has a
are for
food truck
thee and not for
Friday.
me.
Rules for
Yeah.
thee, but not for me.
We wanted to.
It's communist, baby.
Set up on
We like it.
city
That's not
property
communist.
somewhere.
Actually,
have
it
a
is.
food truck
Read
day,
Animal Farm. You might learn
or
something.
Once a month or whatever, that would allow us to do that.
Okay, well then, I think that's fine.
Derek?
I'm fine with it.
Mayor? Jenna?
Don't like it.
Kurt?
I don't like it either.
Leave it. Jerry?
Leave it.
I got another, they talked about neighborhoods. You can't set up in neighborhoods.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, but you can if you have special permit
If you have a
and,
special event
So, for example, I know Macon Manor does HOA and they do food trucks.
and we invite them in, and so if.
Do they have to
it'd
get
be-
a special permit to do
They
that?
don't have to have a special permit as it's written, they're just invited, they're not sitting
Okay,
up
so as
there
long as
every
they're
day.
invited, they
So
can
that's
do-
just kind of,
Okay.
yeah.
But they do have to have a permit, they have to about have the food truck permit.
Right, but they don't have to have a special permit to come into.
And
Okay.
birthday parties, any kind of special event like that, I mean,
Okay.
graduation parties, I think that just goes without saying.
That was one of the, there were some questions that were sent, and I just wanted to make sure
Most definitely.
that we were,
If the city to do it, you don't have to follow any of the rules.
Yeah.
okay. We should get in the food truck business. I think that's
Why
all.
not? We're already about as communist as they get, apparently.
Yeah. Definitely have some Nazis. I think I'm good. Jerry, you have anything?
Nope.
Bobby?
I do not.
Derek? Mayor? Jenna?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Are you here on everything?
Yes, the authors of this document, is there anything else that you would like to get from the board?
I think we've got a lot. I think we're good.
If you don't mind, let me just poll you on the background check, because I know that's been a big concern of many of them. That way we know if you want it left or taken out.
I'm good.
I think we're all okay with the background check.
It's just the information and how it's handled and.
Yes,
For you.
more of how it's handled. Yeah.
I got you.
Oh, that was startling.
Yeah, but if you work for the city, you don't do it.
She slammed that thing, didn't she?